Chapter 467. Han Fei's nose was bleeding. Yes, he was so excited that his nose was bleeding, because his perception range had been increased to 5,000 meters. It was a full 5,000, not discounted at all, and he remembered 20 small pieces of the spiritual painting. Originally, he should have remembered 19 pieces. However, later, Han Fei used 10 soul crystals to remember another piece. However, this time, he only remembered a fragment of the God-scaring painting, but his perception range didn't increase. When Han Fei tried again, he found that 10 soul crystals didn't seem to be enough for him to continue to remember the God-scaring painting. On the contrary, he felt that his mind was much clearer. Han Fei couldn't help but look at the hexagon starfish again, and then asked suspiciously, "Master Hexagon, do you think there is a bottleneck in my perception range?" The hexagon starfish's 6 big eyes looked at Han Fei. "Has your perception range reached a bottleneck?" Han Fei paused for a moment. "You have so many questions. Tell me if there is a bottleneck first. What should I do when I reach a bottleneck? You're making things difficult for me. However, there must be a bottleneck in my perception range." Han Fei's expression changed slightly. Why were they sure? The hexagon starfish rolled his eyes. Because there is a limit on the soul. When the soul strength can't bear more powerful spiritual power, there will be a bottleneck, right? Wow, Han Fei was stunned. He had always thought that the soul was spiritual power. He couldn't distinguish between the two, and no one had told him. So, in fact, they were not the same thing at all? The improvement of the soul would lead to the improvement of spiritual power. And the improvement of spiritual power would further lead to the expansion of the perception range. Yes, it must be like this. Han Fei glanced at the hexagon starfish and thought to himself, this guy knows a lot. Han Fei chuckled. "Master Hexagon, how can I improve my soul? Or rather, what is a soul?" The hexagon starfish's eyes swayed left and right. "I don't know. I'm a starfish that has been locked up for 300 years. Han Fei thought that the hexagon starfish probably didn't know. Its current perception range was less than half of his. It probably hadn't reached a bottleneck yet. When his perception range was no longer increased, Han Fei knew that his soul couldn't be improved, so he didn't plan to continue. Not surprisingly, he was likely to be the person with the largest perception range on the steps into the sea. Han Fei's perception swept out, and everything within 5,000 meters fell into his eyes. However, what surprised him was that there was no one in this area. Didn't they say that the 200th and 201st floors had the most people? How come there's no one here? Han Fei was confused, but he didn't immediately go to Xia Shaochan and the others. Instead, he took out 10 spirit fruits. After a moment of thought, he took out 5 more and began to offer them. However, the 15 spiritual fruits, which were worth nearly 1.2 million points of spiritual energy, were not successfully sacrificed. This, so ruthless. Then he took out another 10 spiritual fruits, 25 spiritual fruits in total, and offered them as a sacrifice. In the end, he still failed. Han Fei, this is a robbery. This is 25 fucking spiritual fruits, not 25 mid-quality pearls. All right? Han Fei immediately put away the spiritual fruit. It consumed too much spiritual energy. This thing was simply a bottomless pit. At this rate, if he sacrificed all the spiritual fruits, he would run out of spiritual fruits before he reached the 100th floor. So Han Fei took out a sea-swallowing seashell. At this moment, Han Fei didn't even bother to estimate the value of a sea-swallowing seashell. Anyway, there were all kinds of mystic stones, low-quality spiritual weapons, precious materials, and exotic fish in it. So, he found that the sea-swallowing seashells he grabbed at the beginning were no longer enough for the sacrifice. Before the 100th floor, he used a total of 7 sea-swallowing seashells to complete this sacrifice. With the completion of this sacrifice, a seed floated out of the empty seawater. Wow, I'm so lucky. I got a treasure. Wait. Suddenly, Han Fei's face changed drastically. He paused and then quickly retreated. Just when he was about to grab the seed, he found that this seed was rapidly expanding and growing larger. But in the blink of an eye, it had already grown to the size of a fist. The seed was cracking and it grew larger and larger. In only 2 seconds, it had become half the size of a man. Also, the speed of its growth was getting faster and faster. When crimson vines burst out of the bulging seed, a piece of data appeared in Han Fei's eyes. Named Demon Shattering Vine Introduction, a deep-sea hunter, venomous, flexible, and full of barbs on its vines. It feeds on large fish and shrimps, can hunt according to the movement of water, and has a strong consciousness. When it is mature, it will produce demon spiritual fruit, which can enhance the soul power. Levels 38 quality, exotics spiritual energy greater than 2,908 points, effect, inedible collectibles demon spiritual fruit unabsorbables. Han Fei frowned and took a few steps back. This was the first and only plant creature he had summoned in the steps into the sea. Demon spiritual fruit? A spiritual fruit that can enhance the soul power? At this moment, the demon shattering vine was growing crazily. From the time it was a seed, it had grown to its current size of 3 meters in less than 10 breaths of time. Suddenly, without thinking too much, Han Fei took action. Only the heavens knew how long this strange plant-type creature would take to grow. It was only 3 meters in size now. What if it grew to 30 meters or 300 meters? Seeing that nobody was around, the blue sea wandering dragon daggers were unleashed. After the demon-shattering vines were cut off, a shocking scene appeared. The demon-shattering vines that were cut off were growing too. After such a short time, the demon-shattering vines had grown to 5 meters in size. Damn it, what the hell is this? Suddenly, the hexagon starfish said, "It seems to have very strong energy and spiritual energy. However, it's being consumed. Did you attack it too early?" Han Fei stepped back. "Should I wait for it to grow up before I attack it?" The hexagon starfish said, "Actually, you can attack it now. Although there are more of them, their vitality remains the same." Han Fei thought of something. Although he didn't know how the hexagon starfish sensed such a mysterious thing as vitality, he didn't think that the hexagon starfish, who was also a sea creature, would lie to him. So, Han Fei continued to control the blue sea wandering dragon daggers and madly cut the vines. Even a crimson vine of the demon-shattering vines was cut into more than a dozen pieces. Although the broken vines were still growing, only the number of them had increased. There seemed to be nothing special about them. Hundreds of minutes later, in front of Han Fei, there was a forest with a radius of 50 meters. Among them, there was a broken main vine in the center. Around the main vine, there were vines tens of meters long everywhere. Those vines were covered with barbs, and a few drops of red liquid dripped from them from time to time. Han Fei's lips twitched. "Is it not growing anymore?" The hexagon starfish nodded. "I think so." "Then kill it first." There was no telling if it was because of the effect of the vines that Han Fei had cut off before, but those agile snake-like tentacles pounced at Han Fei one after another. However, it didn't work. Before they could get close, Han Fei immediately shattered them with the blue sea wandering dragon daggers. This time he really crushed them to death. The vines that were tens of meters long were disappearing. After only a moment, the demon-shattering vines with a radius of 50 meters had been cut to the trunk by Han Fei, which covered an area of less than 10 meters. "Hee, I thought this thing was very fierce." The hexagon starfish scoffed. "That doesn't seem right. It seems to be very strong, but it was cut by you at the beginning. Otherwise, if it were left to grow, it might be much bigger than it is now." Han Fei said in disdain, "So what if it's bigger? It's just a vine after all." As soon as he said that, Han Fei shot an arrow at the trunk of the demon-shattering vines, leaving a big hole in them. When Han Fei was about to kill the demon-shattering vines, he suddenly sensed that a young man in white was coming this way quickly. "Finally, someone's here?" He shot 7 or 8 arrows in a row, and the demon-shattering vines exploded again and again until they disappeared. A crimson fruit emerged in the water. It looked round and red with a thin skin. "Is this the demon spiritual fruit?" Han Fei grabbed the demon spiritual fruit and threw it into Forge the Universe. Then he put the bow into his body, and the blue sea wandering dragon daggers all disappeared into his body. There was only a whetstone and a kitchen knife left in Han Fei's hand. After no more than 2 seconds, a young man in white came with a smile on his face. You summoned the demon-shattering vines? The young man in white looked at Han Fei with a smile, like a gentle scholar, even giving people a feeling of a spring breeze. Han Fei also put on a smile. That's right. What can I do for you? The young man in white extended one of his hands and waved it casually in the water. Then he closed his eyes and sensed for a moment the sharpness of the knife and the sharpness of the arrow. You are a powerful soul warrior. You're not from the Thousand-Star City, are you? Han Fei didn't say anything. He thought to himself, what are you trying to say? The young man in white chuckled and hid his hands in his long sleeves again. Okay, give me the demon's spiritual fruit, and there will be no more disputes between us. Han Fei smiled. I've never seen such an arrogant robber in all my life. Han Fei said casually, what if I don't give it to you? The young man in white said, then let's have a competition. I'm bored. You don't seem to be weak. Let's have a game? Han Fei said with a fake smile, okay, let's have a game. After saying that, the seawater around the two of them began to tremble and become restless. Whirlpools suddenly appeared between the two of them and began to spin crazily. When the young man in white's aura soared to the level of a peak-level dangling fisher, Han Fei frowned. This guy looks rather ordinary, but something doesn't seem right. Clatter. Suddenly, Han Fei lowered his head, only to find that a weird array had appeared below his feet. Han Fei was confused. Mr. Hexagon Starfish, why did you set up an array? The Hexagon Starfish muttered, I didn't. Han Fei's expression slightly changed. It was the young man in white. But when did he set up an array below his feet? Also, the array was a simple confinement array. After Han Fei grunted, dozens of cracks appeared on the confinement array. Han Fei smiled and said, it's impolite not to reciprocate. 6-gate array. At the moment when the purple light rose, a white shadow flashed in the sea, and the 6-gate array missed its target. Han Fei's eyes almost popped out when he saw this scene. What a fast speed. It was even faster than him. Boom. When the young man in white dodged the 6-gate array, Han Fei had already shot out the embroidery needle in his hand. He pointed at the confinement array, and after a boom, the array was broken. The two looked at each other again in the water, and no one trapped the other. The smile on the young man in white's face faded slightly. I guessed right, the array just now. Hexagon Starfish? Han Fei still had a smile on his face. Another guy who had never even seen Mr. Hexagon Starfish but could recognize the Hexagon Starfish just by looking at the 6-gate array. The Hexagon Starfish panicked. Let's run. I feel that I am in danger. Han Fei scoffed. Shut up. What haven't we seen before? How can we just run when we meet someone? Why don't you call yourself Hexagon Starfish? The young man in white said via voice transmission, it's surprising that you have a mysterious creature. I think you are very extraordinary. But how strong are you? With that, the young man in white disappeared in the water, and then Han Fei saw white light and shadows crisscrossing around him. That was not a weapon, nor a combat skill. The white light and shadow was the young man in white himself. Han Fei was speechless. This was the first time he had seen someone so fast. In the blink of an eye, he could run dozens of laps around him. In terms of speed alone, he was probably defeated. Han Fei said to him via voice transmission, what's so great about running fast? Idiot. Han Fei didn't care about the white light and shadow at all but walked straight on the bottom of the sea. He had made up his mind. You can run all you want, but come and hit me if you dare. Sure enough, the white light and shadow turned around and suddenly appeared behind Han Fei. A thin sword actually turned around and intended to attack Han Fei's chest. However, Han Fei ignored the sword at all and slashed behind him with a backhand knife. As he expected, he missed the target. The white-clothed young man didn't expect that Han Fei would not care about getting injured at all and was ready to fight him by exchanging injuries for injuries. Han Fei looked at the rapier that brushed past his chest and didn't even leave a scratch. He sneered, "Coward, have you never fought before? What's so great about being fast? I'll cut you into pieces if you show up in front of me again. The young man's face slightly changed, as if he had been provoked by Han Fei. He turned into a white shadow again, and this time, he attacked in a similar way to Xia Xiaochan's thousand-strike technique. At that moment, Han Fei really felt that many real people were attacking him from all directions so fast that he couldn't resist them at all. While the blood-drinking knife swept across the sky, and the shadows in all directions backed off. The sword flashed dozens of times before Han Fei finally saw that his attack had been broken. When the young man in white showed up again, Han Fei looked at him with a faint smile. What's the point of being fast? That's exactly what you are. You can't even take one attack from me in a head-on battle. You want the demon's spiritual fruit from me? Is your head stuck in your sea-swallowing seashell? The young man in white blushed and was no longer as calm and composed as he was at the beginning. He asked, "Who are you?" Han Fei said, "It's none of your business. You can't beat me. You're not qualified to ask me." As he spoke, Han Fei simply ignored him and swam in a random direction. He decided to find Xia Xiaochan and Tanggu first. Needless to say, Tanggu must be waiting for him on this floor. But after swimming for a while, the young man in white appeared again. At this moment, he seemed to have recovered from his frustration. Han Fei tilted his head and looked at him. "What? Do you still want to fight?" The young man in white said, "I've thought it through. It's not that I'm not strong. You only attacked once and I attacked 17 times. It's not because my sword is too weak. I'm pretty sure that every attack of mine is at least as powerful as a peak-level dangling fisher. However, it took me 17 times to block your attack. This can only mean that you are much stronger than you look. Therefore, it's impossible for someone like you to be a nameless nobody." Han Fei tilted his head. "So, you figured this out in such a short time?" The young man in white continued, "Although I don't know whether the hexagon starfish is your spiritual beast or contractual spiritual beast, no matter which one it is, I'm sure that you are at least a peerless heavenly talent among your peers in the 7 major sections. I think we can be friends since you and I are of the same age." Han Fei was speechless and rolled his eyes at him. "Sorry, I'm not interested. If you keep following me, I'll hit you." The young man in white was silent for a while. "You can't hit me. Among the 7 major sects and the major families, no one can catch up with me in speed." "Huh." Han Fei's eyes narrowed slightly. This person is so fucking confident. At the same time, this person is also arrogant. Although he had to admit that the other party was very fast, did his parents know that he was so arrogant? The young man in white said, "My name is Yi Baiyu. What's your name?" Han Fei paused. "You are Yi Baiyu?" Yi Baiyu was taken aback. "You know me? Then why don't I know you?" Along the way, Han Fei had heard Xiao Qiu talk about Yi Baiyu and Chen Aochen for a long time. He had always felt that the person Xiao Qiu had been talking about must be very strong. In fact, Yi Baiyu was indeed very strong. It could even be said that almost no one in the same realm could beat him with his speed. Take Yang Diu for example. If Yi Baiyu stood still and fought with him, Yang Diu could hack him until he doubted his life. However, once Yi Baiyu moved, he could shake Yang Diu until he doubted his life. The difference between Han Fei and Yang Diu was that Han Fei's physique was stronger than Yang Diu's. Therefore, Yi Baiyu could beat Yang Diu, but he couldn't, because Han Fei was not afraid of Yi Baiyu's sword at all. Of course, if the weapon in Yi Baiyu's hand was replaced by a divine weapon, when Han Fei thought of this, he felt uneasy. No, if the other party really had a divine weapon, what should he do? He absolutely didn't believe that there were no divine weapons in the big clans in the Thousand-Star City. Once they fell into the hands of people like Yi Baiyu, they would probably kill him in minutes. Seeing Han Fei suddenly frowning, Yi Baiyu asked, "What are you thinking about?" Han Fei asked, "How fast are you?" As soon as Yi Baiyu mentioned speed, a proud look appeared on his face. "It's not accurate. If your current speed is 1, I'm about 10. If I use my maximum potential, I should be able to reach 20. Han Fei. At that time, Han Fei was dumbfounded. "My current speed is not slow. I only use about 50% of it." That is to say, Yi Baiyu is 10 times faster than me? If I use the shadow swimming art to the extreme, I can probably reach 4. If I use Little Gold's possession, this number should be about 6 or 7. Han Fei's eyelids couldn't help but twitch a few times. If he used the Majestic Mystic spell in his perfect state, he might be able to exceed 10. The Majestic Mystic spell could increase his attack by nearly 5 times. But Han Fei wasn't sure if he could surpass Yi Baiyu in terms of speed. Han Fei suddenly said, "If I have your speed, what do you think?" Impossible. Chapter 468. Yi Baiyu's answer was very firm. He said without hesitation, "I am 1 in a million. My spiritual heritage grows very fast. You probably haven't heard of my spiritual beast. Anyway, it's very fast." Han Fei grinned. "What if?" Yi Baiyu thought carefully for a moment. "With your physique, my speed, and the intensity of your attack just now, I can easily defeat you. You'll be one of the top 10 talents in the entire 1,000-star city." "Only top 10? Yi Baiyu staggered and said helplessly, "What do you mean by only the top 10? Do you know how terrifying the top 10 in the entire 1,000-star city are? As long as you don't die, you're practically invincible." Han Fei frowned. It seems to be quite strong. Before he met Yi Baiyu, he had never thought that he was slow. But at this moment, he seemed to have understood something. In the past, because he didn't have spiritual energy, he didn't have the opportunity to practice the top speed combat skills. But now, it was different. He seemed to have an inexhaustible supply of spiritual energy in the short term. If they couldn't make the best use of them, how could they be the best in the level 3 fishery? Suddenly, Han Fei changed the topic. "No matter how fast you are, so what? Strength was the key to everything. No matter how fast you are, do you think you can escape after killing someone on the dragon boat? You can't. However, when one's strength reaches the pinnacle, they will be able to." "Nonsense." Yi Baiyu sneered. "There are peak-level hanging fishers on the dragon boats. Even if you were as strong as a peak-level dangling fisher, you might not be able to escape the pursuit of a powerhouse of that level. But I can. A peak-level hanging fisher couldn't leave the dragon boat. If you think you can catch me with your fishing skills, you must be dreaming." "Wait, you tricked me." Han Fei grinned. TSK, I find that you're not a bad person." Yi Baiyu frowned. "Are you going to kill people on the dragon boats?" "Hey, you can't kill it. You're too slow." Han Fei shrugged. "Did I say that I was going to the dragon boats to kill people?" Yi Baiyu stared at Han Fei, trying to see through him. "Who are you exactly?" Han Fei suddenly smiled. "Evil ghosts took their souls, and impermanence took their lives. I'm Fan Datong, the black ghost of the black and white ghosts in the level 3 fishery." "Rice bucket?" Han Fei's face changed. "You're the rice bucket." Yi Baiyu swam to Han Fei's side leisurely and shrugged. "Who named it?" "Your intimidating demeanor is ruined by your name. Besides, why aren't you on the wanted list of the dragon boats?" Han Fei rolled his eyes. "How long ago did you catch up with the list?" Yi Baiyu replied, "Less than 2 months. 2 months is enough for everyone on the wanted list to be replaced." Yi Baiyu nodded. "That's true." Suddenly, Yi Baiyu's expression changed. "Someone is coming." With a swish, Yi Baiyu disappeared from Han Fei's side and appeared a kilometer away in the blink of an eye. This speed really put Han Fei to shame. However, no matter how fast Yi Baiyu was, his perception range was not as large as his. Just now, he had sensed Tang Ji's arrival. "Hiu," the white shadow came back quickly, and Yi Baiyu said to Han Fei excitedly, "You're screwed. A strong enemy is coming. How about it? Give me the demon spiritual fruit, and I'll try to carry you." Han Fei grinned. "Give me your sea-swallowing seashell, and I'll consider making friends with you." Yi Baiyu was lost for words. Sincerity is the most important thing in making friends. "It's too much for you to ask for my sea-swallowing seashell." "Then it's not too much for you to ask for my demon spiritual fruit, is it?" Of course, Han Fei wouldn't hand over the demon spiritual fruit. He had a nagging feeling that it was rather unusual to summon a plant-type living being. If Yi Baiyu weren't here, he would have studied it carefully. While they talked, Tang Ji's figure appeared in their sight. Not just that, Han Fei also sensed that Chao Qiu, Wang Zitian, and Mu Ling appeared 10 kilometers away. Tang Ge looked at Yi Baiyu first. He frowned slightly and pointed the halberd in his hand at Yi Baiyu subconsciously. Get lost. Yi Baiyu said, Tang Ge, I didn't offend you. Besides, you can't hit me. Don't be too cocky. Han Fei grinned. The two of us can beat you at once. Stunned, Yi Baiyu suddenly asked, do you know each other? So, you're from the Thousand-Star City? But why haven't I seen you before? Han Fei said, because you're too fast to have any friends. Yi Baiyu smiled faintly. You too can't catch up with me, nor can you hit me. How about I trade soul crystals for the demon spiritual fruit? Tang Ge frowned. The demon spiritual fruit? Han Fei asked telepathically, do you know it? Tang Ge said, I do. It's a spiritual fruit that can enhance the soul. It's hard to find. Even on the steps into the sea, where countless people offer sacrifices every day, it's hard to get one. Han Fei looked at Yi Baiyu. How do you want to trade it? Yi Baiyu said, 10 for 1. Han Fei's eyes slightly shivered. This pretty boy had 10 soul crystals? Han Fei grinned. 10 soul crystals? I can just grab 2 sea-swallowing seashells and I'll have them. Do you want to trade it for me? Yi Baiyu frowned. That's a lot. The yield of soul crystals is no more than that of the demon spiritual fruit. 10 is already a lot. Han Fei gently blew a bubble at Yi Baiyu. No. If you want to trade 100 soul crystals. Pooh, Yi Baiyu was so angry that he laughed. You're really greedy. 100 soul crystals? Unless you loot the entire steps into the sea. If I had so many soul crystals, would I need to trade for the demon spiritual fruit with you? Han Fei shrugged. Then forget it. For a moment, the three of them were at an impasse. Yi Baiyu stared at Han Fei and Tang Ge for a long time. When he finally decided to leave, his expression changed again. Someone else came? Chao Qiu? Mu Ling? 2 swords? When Chao Qiu saw Yi Baiyu, he immediately roared, Fan Datong, kill him. Kill him now. He has a lot of treasures. Yi Baiyu looked at Han Fei. You all know each other? Why don't I know you? Han Fei grinned. Because I'm looking at your back. As he spoke, Han Fei moved, and the whetstone in his hand enlarged by dozens of meters. The blood-drinking knife had already been launched. On Tang Ji's side, he swung his halberd horizontally and leaped into the air, and the sea water within 100 meters rolled back. On Two Swords' side, the 2 swords floated in the air, turning into sword shadows all over the sky, blocking the way. Mu Ling used a weird footwork and stepped out a sealing array, a weird killing array, and a water wall shield array in a row. As for Chao Qiu, a blazing fish appeared in front of him, and an extremely strong white light shone in the sea. In an instant, everyone's eyes seemed to be so dazzled that they couldn't open them, and they all used their perception to find him. Immediately afterward, a laser flashed, and the area within a radius of 100 meters was directly enveloped by an illusion. Yi Baiyu was stunned. Who the fuck did I piss off? Why did so many people attack me all of a sudden? Although all directions were blocked, Yi Baiyu was indeed the fastest guy in the same realm. His figure was as fast as a fucking bolt of lightning in the sea. There were so many attacks, but none of them hurt him. But what made Yi Baiyu speechless was why all the water in his field of vision turned into knives. He only felt that the knife intent was magnificent, and there were knives in the sky, on the ground, in all directions. Flash. Bam. In the next second, Yi Baiyu bumped into a purple seal. Yi Baiyu asked, when did you set up the 6-gate formation? Han Fei grinned. When you find that you can't run away no matter where you go, when you notice that the knife is coming, look, as I told you before, it's good to be fast, but you're not strong enough. What's the use of speed? In fact, Han Fei himself was in a cold sweat. It was too fucking fast. If he hadn't used the infinity water at the beginning, if his perception range wasn't far enough to inform his companions in advance, if it weren't for the blinding effect of Chao Qiu, And if it weren't for the fact that all the people here were the best of their kind, he really wouldn't have been able to trap this guy. When the spirit forbidden net came down and Yi Baiyu was about to be caught, Han Fei suddenly saw a white mark appear in the six-gate formation. In the six-gate formation, there was only a piece of white fish skin left. Han Fei was dumbfounded and said in shock, "Can it run away?" The hexagon starfish was also stunned. "No. I didn't feel any abnormality in the formation." Chao Qiu exclaimed, "Damn it, it's the star teleportation technique of the Yi family. Oh my god, this guy has actually learned this technique." Mu Ling exclaimed, "Genius." Tanggu didn't speak but just looked at the white fish skin in a daze, as if thinking that he was not as strong as he thought. Han Fei wailed, "My soul crystal, did it just run away like this?" Everyone, suddenly, a voice came. "Fandong, I'll remember you. As I said, in terms of speed, I am unparalleled in the world. When I find an offensive technique, I will fight with you again." Yi Baiyu left, leaving Han Fei and the other four people staring at each other. Seeing that everyone was thinking, Han Fei couldn't help but ask curiously, "What is the star teleportation technique?" Chao Qiu shook his head slightly. "I'm not sure. However, every big clan in the Thousand-Star City has its own heritage. This heritage is not only the accumulation of time, but also these weird and forbidden techniques." Han Fei suddenly asked, "So is Sun Mu's Immortals Slaying Formation?" Chao Qiu nodded. "Yes, so is the Immortals Slaying Formation and the Star Teleportation Technique. However, these combat skills are particularly difficult to cultivate, so it's normal that they can't be cultivated." Wang Zitian said lightly, "Do you think the Immortals Slaying Formation you saw is already very powerful? In fact, it may be that Sun Mu is not good at it." Han Fei's eyelids twitched. "Then what about the Star Teleportation Technique? Even the Flash Stone couldn't dodge it, and he ran away?" Chao Qiu shrugged. "I don't know. I haven't cultivated it. How can I know?" Mu Ling smiled and said, "The Flash Stone is just the most basic escape method. In fact, there are many arrays that can block the Flash Stone. Of course, in the Level 3 fishery, it is cost-effective to use the Flash Stone. There is basically no way to block it, except in special circumstances." Tanggu didn't speak but said to Han Fei via voice transmission, "There seems to be no one on this floor. Don't hang out with Chao Qiu anymore. This guy is up to no good. He wants to cooperate with you just to find someone to take the blame for him." Han Fei replied, "I know. That's exactly what I'm going to do." On the other side, Han Fei looked at Chao Qiu and the others. "Have you seen Xie Xiaoan?" Chao Qiu nodded. "No." "Oh right, where did she go?" Han Fei said to Tanggu via voice transmission, "Leave with Mu Ling for a while. I'll find you later." Tanggu said to Mu Ling, "Let's go first." Mu Ling glanced at Han Fei, nodded slightly, and the two of them quickly left. When their figures disappeared from his sight, Chao Qiu said in surprise, "Huh. I don't know when it started, but I always feel that Tanggu has become our ally." Han Fei said, "This is called mutual appreciation." Wang Zitian frowned. "He doesn't seem to be hostile to you, which is not in line with Tang Ji's character." Han Fei smiled. "What's his character?" Wang Zitian said, "He can't tolerate people like you. At least in any case, he usually won't get along with people like you." Han Fei's face darkened. "Make it clear. What kind of person am I?" Wang Zitian smiled lightly. "Rob from the top to the bottom. In order to achieve your goal, you will not break your hand. You and Chao Qiu are the same kind of people." Han Fei snorted. "What? People from the countryside are really different from you city people." Han Fei said lazily, Forget it. Let's go our separate ways. Chao Qiu, you don't really want to kill these people, do you? In fact, you just want to disgust them, tease them, and hit them. Hey, I'll take the blame. However, this 201st floor seems to have been cleared by someone. Then our fate ends here. It's up to you whether you want to go or stay. Chao Qiu hurriedly said, Don't. We've been here for so many floors. We have a friendship. Han Fei sneered. Friendship? Okay, when I can enter the 1000-star city one day, let's talk about friendship again. Chao Chiu chased after Han Fei and said, "How long do we have to wait? We have a deep friendship now. I think if we work together, we can surpass my brother and maybe break through the 250th floor." Han Fei looked at Chao Chiu with a faint smile, which made the little fatty a little embarrassed. Chao Chiu took 2 steps back and said awkwardly, "What's wrong?" Han Fei smiled. "You want us to be your free fighters, right? Break through the 250th floor? Do you want me to help you break through, or do you want 2 swords to help you break through? Forget it, you 2 can fight to however many floors you want to fight to next, so be it. The 200th floor is not a small number. Don't forget, you only broke through the 148th floor last time." Han Fei walked away coolly without looking back, leaving Chao Chiu where he was. Wang Zetian came over. "Let's go. Let's find a place to make a sacrifice." Chao Chiu curled his lips. "I thought we were all good friends." Wang Zetian shook his head slightly. "There are only interests between you. How can we be friends? You need him to help you deal with Sun Mu and the others. We both know that we can't kill them, but our goal has basically been achieved. I guess they are all vomiting and having diarrhea outside at this moment. And he, although I don't know why, seems to have some hatred for Sun Mu and the others. Otherwise, there is no reason for him to be with you. There is another possibility, which is that he wants to get more sea-swallowing seashells." Chao Chiu secretly glanced at Wang Zetian, thinking, if I tell you that Fan Dadong is Han Fei? Oh no, Wang Zetian doesn't know who Han Fei is. Thinking of this, Chao Chiu suddenly said, "Forget it, I don't want to fight anymore. I want to go out." Wang Zetian's eyes widened. "We've already reached the 200th floor. Why do you want to stop?" Chao Chiu twisted his body. "Why do I still want to fight? Anyway, I can't surpass my brother no matter how hard I try. Then why should I continue? I might as well go out and see them make a fool of themselves. Yes, I'm going back to the 1,000-star city and then tell everyone about it." Wang Zetian. Han Fei actually quite liked little fatty Chao. However, he had long seen that although Chao Chiu was arrogant, the children of the 7 major sects and the major clans all seemed to give in to this kid. This undoubtedly showed that the Chao family's status in the 1,000-star city was not low. Also, on the premise that they knew Chao Chiu wanted to mess with them, why did these people still maintain this attitude? Although Chao Chiu also fought and beat him, he didn't hurt him, which was the biggest concession he could make. If you made friends with such a person, you might get yourself killed. It would be unwise to integrate into that circle if you didn't belong to it. After a while, Han Fei had already found Tangu. He didn't go far and was always within Han Fei's perception range. Seeing Han Fei, Tangu grinned and gave Han Fei a bear hug. "How did it go? What happened after the 200th floor?" Han Fei glanced at him, only to hear Mu Ling say, "You guys talk. I'm going for a walk." Looking at Mu Ling's leaving figure, Han Fei couldn't help but exclaim, "Good. Your girlfriend is quite sensible." Don't talk nonsense." "She is not?" Han Fei patted Tangu on the shoulder. "Come on, don't brag. You like her. There are so many people from the big clans, but you still scolded them coldly. What are you afraid of?" With that, Han Fei waved his hand and a sea-swallowing seashell fell in front of Tangu. "Take it. We are brothers. You took care of me before. Now that I have something good, I can't leave it to you." Tangu frowned. "Are you still pretending to be nice to me? I don't want your things. I have a lot of them here too. I just robbed them from above." Han Fei smiled. "Keep them. I have a lot of sea-swallowing seashells. I don't need your dozens. Also, what do you mean my things? They belong to us. There are some soul crystals inside. My perception range has reached a bottleneck and can't be improved anymore. There are not many soul crystals. Here you are." "Soul crystals?" Tangu was taken aback. He took the sea-swallowing seashell and found that there were 100 soul crystals and millions of mid-quality pearls in it. His eyelids twitched. "So many?" Han Fei smiled. "I robbed them all. The 1,000-star city is not as good as the Blue Sea town. Do you think I don't know that? How many of those guys on the 200th floor are simple? We don't have their wealth, so we have to create our own. Anyway, we can't lose to them. Tango hesitated. But, no buts. After the steps into the sea, you and I will be far apart from each other again. The next time we meet, I'm afraid it will be when I arrive at the 1,000-star city. I don't want to hear people say that Tango, a heavenly talent, is declining when I arrive at the 1,000-star city in the future. Tango laughed. That's impossible. Han Fei also grinned. Then take it. Also, don't mess with Sun Mu and the others. Look at me, I dare to fight them. If you ask me to kill them, I dare not. However, it doesn't mean I won't do it in the future. One day, I will get back at them. While talking, Han Fei saw that Tangu was looking at him, and he couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong?" Tangu said in relief, "Han Fei, you've changed. You are more confident, optimistic, stronger, and most importantly, very smart." Smith. Han Fei rolled his eyes and said, "Bullshit. Okay, I won't go with you for the rest of the journey. I have to find Xia Xiaochan and then have a good adventure in the steps into the sea. Our journey has only just begun." Tangu held the sea-swallowing seashell in his hand and nodded heavily. "But when you come to the 1,000-star city in the future, I want to see her true face. What kind of girl can make you yearn for her day and night? Hey, she's really beautiful. But it's not enough to say that I yearn for her day and night. This stinky girl never makes things easy for me." After a moment, Mu Ling knew that the two of them had finished talking when she saw them walking over with smiles on their faces. They were close. Han Fei said, "Sister-in-law, I'm leaving. Wait for me at your wedding banquet." "I'm leaving." Mu Ling and Tangu both blushed. When they looked at Han Fei again, he had already left without looking back and waved his hand behind his back. Looking at Han Fei's leaving figure, Tangu clenched his fists and murmured, "Don't worry. When you come to the 1,000-star city, I will definitely stand above all the heroes." Mu Ling gently grabbed Tang Ji's arm. "Your brother is really carefree." Huh. Chapter 469. Mo Fian didn't know that she had dodged a bullet. She was just a little more vigilant. As far as she knew, at such a critical moment, Chao Qiu and the others all ran away, which was typical abnormal. Based on her understanding of Chao Qiu, although this little fatty was full of evil tricks, he was good to his friends. Although many people wanted to kill him, in fact, they would protect him at critical moments. So she was sure that Chao Qiu had a reason to run away. After going down to the 201st floor, Mo Fian didn't go to make a sacrifice. She was not here to fight, but to solve her doubts. However, when she found that the people on the 201st floor were all gone, she couldn't help but feel strange. It was reasonable to say that those who could reach the 201st floor should be stronger than those on the 200th floor. Who cleared the 201st floor? Just as she was looking around for traces of other people, the sea began to shake violently. There seemed to be a fierce battle somewhere, the kind of intense kind. As a genius, Mo Fian naturally liked to join in the fun, so she immediately swam in the direction of the battle. However, just after she swam for a short distance, she saw a thin man also swimming in that direction. Isn't this the individual who is with Chao Qiu? Swish. The soft sword was unsheathed, and a sword light swept past. Mo Fian stopped in front of the man. "Ha, brother, where are you going?" After seeing Mo Fian, Xia Xiaochan was stunned at first, and then she was disgusted by Mo Fian's delicate figure and charm. So disgusting. Mo Fian's face changed, and her face fell. "As a woman, shouldn't you praise me when you see such a beautiful woman? Why are you disgusting?" Mo Fian's face was cold. "Say it again if you dare." "Disgusting, disgusting, disgusting. Just talk. Why are you twisting? Boys don't like it." Mo Fian? Mo Fian was amused and asked, "Then what kind of woman do you think men like?" Xia Xiaochan said straightforwardly, "Of course I like women who can fight." Mo Fian? Mo Fian was so angry that she almost laughed. Is he a fucking straight man? It was the biggest joke in the world. This was the first time she heard a man say that he liked girls who could fight. Are you a masochist, or is there something wrong with your head? Xia Xiaochan thought for a while. Han Fei was like this. So, he nodded with certainty. Yes, you're disgusting. Shut up. Swoosh. Mo Fian swept out a sword light without hesitation. However, who was Xia Xiaochan? How could it be struck by an ordinary sword light? She casually swung her saber and destroyed the sword light. Xia Xiaochan said coldly, I know you. You are a bad woman. Now that you've met me, hand over your sea-swallowing seashell. Mo Fian was slightly taken aback. Is this guy so reckless? You don't like women, and you want me to hand over my sea-swallowing seashell? However, the next moment, Mo Fian's heart tightened. This man was too fast. Xia Xiaochan, who had disguised herself as a man with the metamorphosis water, had resumed her identity as a hunter. As soon as he made his move, he immediately went into stealth mode. Almost at the same time, in the blink of an eye, Xia Xiaochan had stabbed Mo Fian with 2 daggers. It was no wonder that Mo Fian said Xia Xiaochan was fast. If she knew that Xia Xiaochan had teleported here, how would she react? Ding ling ling. When Xia Xiaochan's dagger swept past Mo Fian's waist, a big hole was left on her outer clothes, and inside, she was wearing a layer of fish scale in her armor. 7 tails. Mo Fian moved her feet and dozens of sword lights flashed, and 7 centipede-like chains suddenly appeared under her feet. On both sides of the chains, there were sharp blades. These 7 tails were a bit like Han Fei's 9-star chain. Xia Xiaochan was so familiar with this that she could even guess what Mo Fian would do with her eyes closed. As a result, when the 7 tails swept across, Mo Fian was shocked to find that almost every second, a wound was left on her body, and her spiritual energy protective cover was directly cut to pieces, but her 7 tails didn't even touch Xia Xiaochan. Humph! I'm going to stab through your iron shell. In an instant, the seawater was full of shadow marks. At that moment, Mo Fian didn't say a word but held her amulet and watched her amulet being cut dozens of times in the blink of an eye. When a fierce double dagger stabbed at her, with a crack, one of Mo Fian's amulets was cut to pieces. At that time, Mo Fian was shocked. Which damn heavenly talent did I encounter this time? How could he be so strong? With such strength, fighting skills, and speed, he was definitely a genius among the 7 major sections. Why didn't I know him? Yes, just like Fan Dadong, he was strong enough to fight the Immortals slaying formation alone, but no one knew him. Poison explosion. When a circle of black smoke dispersed, Mo Fian took a closer look, only to find that Xia Xiaochan had already appeared 100 meters away. At this moment, she was holding a spiritual fruit in her hand, tilting her head and chewing the spiritual fruit while looking at her. Xia Xiaochan asked, Did you not use your full strength? Why do I feel that you are very weak? Mo Fian's head almost exploded. I'm weak? Mo Fian said coldly, Damn you, you've pissed me off. Don't you like girls who are good at fighting? Then I'll show you what it means to be good at fighting. After saying that, a giant eel that was 100 feet long appeared. However, this eel had a peculiar appearance. It had 7 tails on its head. It's not a centipede. Xia Xiaochan frowned in disdain. Why is your spiritual beast so ugly? Mo Fian couldn't take it anymore. How many times had she been despised since they met? In particular, the guy's disdainful eyes and the sound of disdain made her feel inexplicably irritated. Ugly? Ignorant man. In your next life, remember not to say the word ugly to a girl. Swish, swish, swish. The giant eel split into 7 in an instant. With a thought from Mo Fian, the 7 giant eels turned into 7 surging currents, rolling up the seawater within 100 meters in the blink of an eye. Chilla! Electric currents suddenly burst out, and a blue arc spread in the seawater. Xia Xiaochan had disappeared the moment the eel turned into water. Because she was too fast, she turned into a shadow in the water and didn't attract Mo Fian's attention. Poochie! While Mo Fian was stunned, she felt that her waist was pricked. She looked down, only to see a hand reaching out to her belly. Xia Xiaochan was knocked away, and a strange and creepy power condensed next to Mo Fian. Xia Xiaochan's body was still flashing with electric arcs, and her face was slightly pale. The electric arcs are not bad, much stronger than those of the piercing electricity jellyfish and the dragon eel. Mo Fian stuffed a healing pill into her mouth and said angrily, "Don't compare my seven-tailed poisonous eel with those garbage creatures, you damn man." Xia Xiaochan curled her lips. "However, it's not invincible. What else do you have? I heard that you are on the same level as Sun Mu and Yangdu. It seems that you are still weak. Don't call me weak or ugly." The first move of Water Dragon chant, 2 dragons playing with pearls. Xia Xiaochan looked around and quickly turned invisible. The seawater on both sides surged, and 2 huge water dragons were condensed and lunged at her. Xia Xiaochan was shocked to find that she had been locked on and the water was restricting her. Seeing that Xia Xiaochan came out, Mo Fian said coldly, "Sun Mu has the immortal slaying formation, and I have the water dragon chant. Do you really think I'm a vase?" The pressure from all directions was getting stronger and stronger. The 2 water dragons were too huge. Even if Xia Xiaochan could flash, she probably couldn't get out of the range of the 2 water dragons. At this moment, Xia Xiaochan's eyebrows moved, and a shadow flashed by. Xia Xiaochan opened her mouth and roared, and a real dragon roar echoed in all directions. As for the 2 water dragons that were about to play with the pearls, they instantly dissipated into nothingness, blown up by the dragon's roar. Pooh, Mo Fian was not far away from Xia Xiaochan. Being roared like this, she immediately felt that her internal organs were rolling and her blood was surging. She was so shocked that she vomited 3 mouthfuls of blood. "Who the hell are you?" Mo Fian was shocked. He broke the water dragon chant with 1 move. Who was this man? Where the hell did Chao Qiu find these 2 people? Xia Xiaochan said coldly, "Anything else?" "No, it's my turn." Chapter 470. Perhaps because sound traveled fast in the water, Han Fei had already arrived before the battle between Xia Xiaochan and Mo Fian was over. The moment Mo Fian saw Han Fei, she crushed a flash stone and ran away without any hesitation. Mo Fian only felt that the origins of these 2 people were too strange. He was originally a monstrous genius with unparalleled talent, but he was unknown until now. With her strength, she wasn't sure if she could deal with one of them, not to mention Fan Dadong, who could challenge the immortal slaying formation on his own. Mo Fian didn't think that her water dragon roar could compete with the immortal slaying formation at full power, so she chose to leave. After flashing out a flash stone, Mo Fian didn't stop at all. Her figure faded and disappeared from the 201st floor. It was not that she didn't want to continue, but that she didn't think it was meaningful to continue. Even a guy like Chao Tian could only reach the 208th floor. No matter how deep it was, she didn't think Chao Tian could reach the 250th floor. But was the steps into the sea really only 250th floor? No one knew about this because no one had ever been there. Therefore, she instinctively felt that with the ability of a peak-level dangling fisher, she could only reach the 250th floor. That was the end. When Han Fei arrived, Xia Xiaochan rolled her eyes at him. "Why are you here so soon? That Mo Fian is about to show her full strength." Han Fei was speechless. "Where is the giant arowana? Did you release the giant arowana? How could I have come so fast if I hadn't heard the dragon roar?" Xia Xiaochan's eyebrows flashed, and her momentum suddenly dropped. Xia Xiaochan made a face at Han Fei. "Don't worry. She didn't see it. I fused with it directly." Hearing this, Han Fei was slowly relieved and asked in confusion, "Why did this woman come down too?" "I don't know. But this person is really not good. Let me tell you, her spiritual beast is a giant eel, a 7-tailed giant eel, the ugly kind." "Really?" Han Fei looked around. "Forget it. Leave her alone. The 201st floor has been cleared, and that person has left. We can cultivate here for a while." Xia Xiaochan's eyes lit up. "A breakthrough?" Han Fei shook his head. "No, let's see how many soul crystals you have first." "Soul crystals?" Xia Xiaochan didn't realize until she was free that she could increase the range of her perception. After a while, Xia Xiaochan sat on the ground and spread out the soul crystals. 47 in total. "What about you?" Han Fei also sat on the ground and waved his hand, and 86 soul crystals fell to the ground. He gave Tang Gu 100 soul crystals, which were all the soul crystals he had left. So many? Xia Xiaochan exclaimed and looked at Han Fei in shock. Han Fei grinned and said, "There weren't many. When we were on the 200th floor, they all had diarrhea and the seawater turned yellow. I threatened them with the antidote and forced them to hand over their sea-swallowing seashells. As a result, the number of soul crystals has increased." Xia Xiaochan imagined the scene. Fortunately, she didn't see the subsequent scenes, or she would have vomited. "Then let's split it in half." Xia Xiaochan secretly glanced at Han Fei, pulled some of Han Fei's pile to her, and bared her big white teeth at Han Fei. Han Fei was speechless. "Here you go. I've eaten them." Xia Xiaochan. "That's what I want to tell you. The strength of your soul is related to the strength of your spiritual power. And the strength of your spiritual power is related to the size of your perception range. I've reached a bottleneck." "Bottleneck?" Xia Xiaochan jumped up from the ground and looked at Han Fei incredulously. "What's the bottleneck?" Han Fei blinked. "For now, it's 5,000 meters. Han Fei didn't intend to conceal this matter. He felt that the greatest benefit of the steps into the sea was that it could improve people's soul power and increase their perception range. If he told her about it, Xia Xiaochan would have a reference. Xia Xiaochan's eyes widened. "So fast? When did you absorb it? Why did you absorb it so fast?" Han Fei thought for a moment. "It may be a matter of personal talent. Hurry up and absorb it. As it happens, the 200th floor has been cleared by us, and no one should come here in a short time. Besides, there have been a lot of battles during this period. I think it's time to try to make a breakthrough to become an advanced dangling fisher." Xia Xiaochan didn't stand on ceremony with Han Fei. She pulled all the soul crystals over. Then, with a wave of her hand, she threw out more than 1,000 sea-swallowing seashells. Han Fei? Han Fei's blood froze. More than 1,000 sea-swallowing seashells. In terms of robbery, he was still not as good as Xia Xiaochan. Is this girl crazy? How did she get them? Xia Xiaochan said, "There are too many things inside. Let's take out all the good things and sacrifice the bad ones. These sea-swallowing seashells should be enough." Han Fei also waved his hand, and a pile of more than 500 sea-swallowing seashells was piled on the ground. He couldn't help but rub his hands. He really liked the pleasure of opening boxes. So, Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan divided the work and got busy. At this moment, the hexagon starfish also ran down from Han Fei's shoulder. Looking at the pile of sea-swallowing seashells, its 6 big eyes were glowing. Han Fei said, "Go away. There's nothing for you for the time being. I have to calculate the value of these sea-swallowing seashells first." The hexagon starfish said, "I also contributed. I threw the 6 gate arrays one after another." Han Fei's eyes flickered. Yes, you also contributed. So, when I see a shiny stone, I will throw it away first." "But I can throw it away, but you can't secretly stuff it into your treasure house. I have to calculate the value." The hexagon starfish's 6 big eyes rolled like a top and he said repeatedly, "No. The joyful journey of unboxing began. Han Fei said, "This 3 mid-quality spiritual weapons, 6 low-quality spiritual weapons, no high-quality spiritual weapons, 110,000 mid-quality pearls, a set of battle suits, 3 combat skills, but none of them are good." Han Fei said, "Here are all stones, wood, 1 high-quality spiritual weapon, 260,000 mid-quality pearls, 5 combat skills, 11 mid-quality spiritual weapons. Big deal. 3 high-quality spiritual weapons, ultra-quality materials, 102 flash stones, 1.02 million mid-quality pearls. Oh my god, my sea-swallowing seashells are all stuffed." For the first 4 hours, Han Fei was still immersed in the thrill of unboxing. But as time went on, he almost dozed off. In front of the hexagon starfish, all kinds of stones were placed like mountains. This guy secretly took a piece and threw it into his treasure house, thinking that Han Fei didn't see it. In fact, Han Fei didn't bother to explain. There were too many fucking things. He felt that his IQ was not high enough. It seemed that he couldn't count them all. In the end, Han Fei simply marked the value of all the treasures in the sea-swallowing seashells according to the value of mid-quality spiritual weapons. Materials and weapons above mid-quality spiritual weapons, such as flash stones and other special items, were regarded as good things and kept for himself. Everything else was used as sacrifices. So, 2 days later, Han Fei sorted out a total of 142 superior-grade spiritual weapons and 68 superior-grade battle armors, 1,308 mid-quality spiritual weapons, 201 mid-quality battle suits, 1,000 ultra-quality pearls. He didn't know whose sea-swallowing seashell he dug out. That guy was really rich. 300,000 high-quality pearls. 800 million mid-quality pearls. Han Fei didn't know how to spend it at all. He felt that he should go to the ghost ship and buy all the spiritual fruits he could buy. There were a total of 12,008 flash stones. Han Fei also didn't know how to use them. He felt that he would never be able to use them up. In addition to the above, there were 51 treasure maps, 386 ultra-quality materials, 2,908 high-quality materials. There were a total of 928 combat skills, of which 901 were directly classified as useless by Han Fei. Of the remaining 27, 9 were demon-level high-quality combat skills, and some were auxiliary combat skills. As for the rest, except for the spiritual fruits that could improve physique and spiritual power, they were all put away by Han Fei. The rest of the things below mid-quality spiritual weapons were simply innumerable. It took Han Fei a full 600 sea-swallowing seashells to store them all. Among them, the hexagon starfish didn't take away much, but Han Fei didn't bother to take it back. In the past, if the hexagon starfish stole so many things, he would have skinned it. But now, small amounts of money. Han Fei originally wanted to calculate how much money he and Xia Xiaochan had robbed. But at this moment, he felt that math was not enough. So he simply gave up. It was too fucking much. Who would be able to calculate this? In the end, Han Fei divided these things above mid-quality spiritual weapons into 2 piles. Each pile had exactly 80 sea-swallowing seashells. Of the 80, at least 60 were filled with money, and the remaining 20 were all kinds of weapons, materials, and flash stones. The remaining sea-swallowing seashells were filled with fishing boats. When Han Fei went out of the steps into the sea, there were still a lot of sea-swallowing seashells. At that time, he could consider the real million knife art. It wasn't until the 5th day after Han Fei counted the sea-swallowing seashells that Xia Xiaochan woke up. Xia Xiaochan immediately looked at Han Fei. "Hey, how many soul crystals have you eaten? Why is it that I've absorbed more than 100 and now I'm only 1,900 meters away? But you've already reached 5,000 meters. Chapter 471. Han Fei was stunned. Xia Xiaochan's perception range had increased to 1,900 meters? This number was completely beyond his expectations. According to Chao Qiu, Xia Xiaochan's perception range was at most 1,200 meters. How did she get the extra 700 meters? Could it be that Xia Xiaochan also had a cultivation method similar to the God-scaring painting? However, Han Fei didn't need to explain it to Xia Xiaochan. He just needed to say, "I'm talented," and he would be stabbed twice at most. He was used to it. In the next 3 days, Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan didn't leave the 201st floor. It took Xia Xiaochan 3 days and less than 50 spiritual fruits to complete the breakthrough from an intermediate dangling fisher to an advanced dangling fisher. Because he had a lot of money, Han Fei also sacrificed twice to summon sea creatures for Xia Xiaochan to practice and stabilize her cultivation. As expected, he didn't summon demon-shattering vines, but 2 level 39 exotic crabs and octopuses were summoned. The octopus, in particular, was as strong as the freak octopus. Creatures like octopuses were usually very smart and had their own talents in fighting. Han Fei was shocked. Han Fei also ate more than 50 spiritual fruits and tried to make a breakthrough. In the end, he had accidentally failed to break through, but his data had also changed. Owner Han Fate level greater than 36, intermediate dangling fisher, spiritual energy 1938356, 5086, spiritual heritage level 5, high quality spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 30, weapons, blue sea wandering dragon daggers, water dividing seal, blood drinking knife, main art, void breaking technique, volume 4 of void fishing, demon level, divine quality. His upper limit of spiritual energy didn't increase much, even less than 100 points. However, there was still a change after all. It meant that he still had room for growth. He planned to wait for a few more days and make a breakthrough when his upper limit of spiritual energy was completely fixed. At that time, he would definitely become one of the strongest advanced dangling fishers. On this day, Xia Xiaochan said, "Okay, I'm almost done. I'll slowly stabilize my cultivation through actual combat. But why haven't you made a breakthrough yet?" Han Fei smiled and said, "Do you think everyone is like you? Do you think I'll make a breakthrough whenever I say so?" Suddenly, Han Fei asked, "Right, what's the upper limit of your spiritual energy?" Xia Xiaochan closed her eyes and sensed it. 4,499 points. That's high, right? How about you? Han Fei forced a smile. Me? A little less than you. Xia Xiaochan smiled smugly and thought to herself, "It's fine as long as it's less than me. I've finally surpassed you." As for the specific amount, she didn't ask, nor did she bother to ask. However, Xia Xiaochan didn't notice that Han Fei frowned slightly. 4,499 points was equivalent to 4,500 points. After all, if they sacrificed together, the creatures summoned would be more difficult to deal with. To put it bluntly, the real purpose of them coming to the level 3 fishery was to gain experience. If it was 2 against 1 with their current strength, they might really be able to go all the way to the 250th floor without any hindrance. But at this moment, the two of them decided to fight one-on-one. If they couldn't beat the other, they would join hands. This time, a fish head suddenly emerged from the water. The fish head looked left and right, and then a webbed claw reached out. Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan looked at each other in surprise. "Inferior manfish?" Xia Xiaochan said in astonishment, "Are they these ugly monsters?" "Both of them." Han Fei was also stunned. "They are inferior manfish, hanging fishers." Han Fei glanced at them and found that these two inferior manfish were both level 40. Besides, these two inferior manfish both had companion creatures. Han Fei's face became serious. "Attention, they also have spiritual beasts. We have to treat them as intelligent creatures." When the two inferior manfish came out, they looked puzzled as if they were saying, "Where the hell is this?" Wow, wow. In Han Fei's body, the blue sea wandering dragon daggers flew out, and the embroidery needle in his hand surged with spiritual energy. It was not the first time that he had fought inferior manfish. When he was in the heavenly desolate city, he had killed several inferior manfish. And they were all higher than level 40. At this moment, when the inferior manfish came over with a harpoon, Han Fei used the draw technique backhand. Of course, although the inferior manfish was a little stupid, its reaction was not slow. At the moment when the draw technique was used, a big green fish also swam over and bit at Han Fei. However, a knife light flashed and half of the fish head was cut off. Wow, wow. As soon as the inferior manfish saw that its companion was dead, it went crazy. Fearlessly, it wrapped its harpoon with powerful spiritual energy and rushed at Zhang Han. Han Fei sneered. If one knife didn't work, then two. Swish. The knife fell and the fish died. After killing this inferior manfish, Han Fei glanced at Xia Xiaochan. She had already gained the upper hand and didn't need help. However, Han Fei was a little puzzled. A level 40 inferior manfish was not strong. At least on the 200th floor, whether it was Yang Diu or Sun Mu, they could definitely kill this inferior manfish. Then why did only Chao Tian reach the 208th floor? Was it because the sacrifice here was too expensive? Han Fei shook his head. Those people were not short of money. Why would they refuse to come here? If it was not that they couldn't beat them, it must be the advantage of staying on the 200th floor, which was more cost-effective than fighting later. Thinking of the soul crystals he snatched, Han Fei seemed to understand something. Those bastards, are they collecting soul crystals on the 200th floor? While Han Fei was pondering, Xia Xiaochan had already killed the inferior manfish. She grabbed a harpoon and patted Han Fei casually. Look, just give me a harpoon. Han Fei gestured at Xia Xiaochan. Look, I'm not much better than you. You gave me a mid-quality spiritual weapon, which is not as good as your harpoon. Xia Xiaochan asked, are we going to the lower floor? Wait, I want to summon it again. Xia Xiaochan. After a while, another inferior manfish died under Han Fei's knife. This time, the steps into the sea gave Han Fei a fish scale. Han Fei fiddled with it for a while and found that its quality was comparable to a high-quality spiritual weapon, so he threw it into Forge the Universe. Han Fei clicked his tongue and said, Xia Xiaochan, maybe we won't meet ordinary sea creatures anymore if we go down. If my guess is right, they should all be above the level of inferior manfish. Xia Xiaochan didn't bother to think about it and said, then just go to the next floor and you'll know. You wasted a sacrifice. Chapter 472. Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan couldn't have been more frustrated in the following battles. Sure enough, as Han Fei expected, there were no ordinary marine creatures at all. The only time he met an inferior manfish was when Xia Xiaochan summoned a demon-shattering vine. Then, naturally, she obtained a demon spiritual fruit. Han Fei had seen the demon spiritual fruit a long time ago. It could improve one's soul, but Han Fei didn't think one demon spiritual fruit was enough. As he expected, Xia Xiaochan only said that her head was clearer after she ate it. However, Xia Xiaochan's perception range hadn't reached the upper limit yet, so she couldn't test how much a demon spiritual fruit could improve her soul. After the 230th floor, all the little fishmen he encountered had become level 42 little fishmen. Many of their companions were sea scorpions or cyan fish. A level 42 inferior manfish was hard enough to deal with. When they were in the heavenly desolate city, Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan usually killed the inferior manfish by cooperating or using the majestic mystic spell. But in this place, could they cooperate if they wanted to gain experience? Han Fei had such an idea, but Xia Xiaochan turned it down. On the 236th floor. After killing another inferior manfish, Xia Xiaochan sat on the ground. It's getting more and more difficult. The spiritual beasts of these inferior manfish are different. It's time to fuse them. Han Fei sat on the ground too. But they can't trap us, can they? How many floors do you think Chao Tian has reached? Xia Xiaochan thought for a moment. I estimate 250. Han Fei paused for a moment. You're calling him an idiot, aren't you? Xia Xiaochan snorted. I don't think I can reach the 250th floor if I work hard. So, do you think there will be more floors later? Han Fei thought for a moment. We're losing money, aren't we? Xia Xiaochan thought for a moment and nodded. We have to consume a sea-swallowing seashell for every 2 floors. The lower we go, the more we'll need. However, what they give us is mediocre and not enough for a sacrifice at all. Han Fei analyzed, what do you think the real purpose of the steps into the sea is? Xia Xiaochan was stunned for a moment. What purpose? But in any case, it wasn't for treasures. We're not fools. Don't we know whether we've made a profit or a loss? Han Fei shook his head. If it was the first 100 floors, it would be hard to say whether it would be a loss or a profit. But after the 100th floor, it was basically a loss. But for some people, this was a good place to train themselves. So, just treat it as paying money to gain experience. Xia Xiaochan pondered for a moment. It's good if it's only for experience. However, there were still many people who came for opportunities. Until now, we haven't seen any fortuitous encounters. Han Fei blinked and said, we looted so many sea-swallowing seashells. Isn't that an opportunity? The hexagon starfish interjected, forget it, we should go back and rob it again. Xia Xiaochan said angrily, Big starfish, it's none of your business. The hexagon starfish muttered, it's too difficult and dangerous now. The hexagon starfish now understood. Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan were two dangerous people. What inferior manfish? They could defeat all of them. Fortunately, he was a quiet, reliable starfish and never fought. Han Fei thought for a moment. Let's continue. Anyway, let's reach the 250th floor first. If it doesn't work, let's use the majestic mystic spell, or 2 against 1. On the 248th floor. At this moment, Xia Xiaochan and Han Fei were eating barbecue in the hexagon starfish's door. Xia Xiaochan's mouth was greasy and she said, I found that level 43 inferior manfish is already my limit. If I fight again, I won't be able to beat it. Han Fei scoffed. Didn't you just become an advanced dangling fisher? Xia Xiaochan said angrily, Yes, I did, but I still can't cut you. Besides, I feel that the more I fight, the more the giant arowana wants to come out. Han Fei was taken aback. The giant arowana wants to come out? Xia Xiaochan nodded. Yes, I can't suppress it. As soon as it comes out, I have to borrow its power. The more I borrow its power, the more I want to use it. Han Fei wondered, isn't this a good thing? This shows that you and your spiritual beast have a mutual affinity. What the hell are you talking about? The more I use the power of the giant arowana, the harder it is for me to control myself. Han Fei's expression changed slightly. Is it so serious? Xia Xiaochan nodded. So, I'm going to reach the 250th floor and not go to the next floor for now. Han Fei pondered for a moment. Maybe there is no next floor. Xia Xiaochan curled her lips. Impossible. There must be opportunities that we don't know. Otherwise, all our sea-swallowing seashells will be wasted. If we pay the price, we have to give it enough opportunities. If it doesn't, it will smash this place. Han Fei, the hexagon starfish interjected inappropriately, how can you smash such a big place? Shut up. Han Fei chuckled. Okay, I'll try my best. This damn place is really weird. Although it's an altar, I think it's a place for swindling people. The money we spent to get here is enough to buy dozens of wind god boats. If I don't get something good back, I won't be able to go out. That's right. With that, Xia Xiaochan threw all the sea-swallowing seashells to Han Fei and said, Take them all. You are thick-skinned and can fight. Han Fei rolled his eyes and said, Go away. Give them all to me. Do you want to starve? Xia Xiaochan said, Anyway, I can't fight for the time being. I don't need them if I don't give them to you. Han Fei thought for a moment. How about this? You keep the money and give me the 20 sea-swallowing seashells with high-quality spiritual weapons and mid-quality spiritual weapons. I don't want the flash stones, and the other sea-swallowing seashells are useless to me. Xia Xiaochan frowned. What if it's not enough? Don't worry. I still have other things. By the way, Han Fei took out a sea-swallowing seashell and said, Take the wind god boat, 200 yellow-blooded sea cucumbers, and dozens of treasure maps. These are all for you. Xia Xiaochan tilted her head and looked at Han Fei. Do you want me to go out first? Han Fei smiled. You can't go back to the upper floor of the steps into the sea. You can only go down. You and I must go out from the entrance. However, we have a lot of enemies outside. If you feel something is wrong, you go first and then find Lu Renquang and Luo Xiaobai. Remember, don't go to the dragon boat. You can only go to the specter known as the evil shield that I told you about. Han Fei told her a lot of things, only to see Xia Xiaochan curling her lips and looking at him with a sulky face. Han Fei said with a smile, I'm just on the safe side. Xia Xiaochan snorted. Go. If I go out, I'll wait for you outside for half a month. If you don't come out for half a month, I'll go find Xiaobai and the others. Han Fei grinned. But remember, when you wait outside, you'd better pretend to be a girl. Although the metamorphosis water can turn you into a man, you have to talk. Got it? Annoying. The 250th floor. Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan still didn't meet Chao Tian. Han Fei wondered if this guy had already gone out. On the 250th floor, The place became smaller and smaller. As Chao Chiu said, the lower they went, the smaller the place became. But the slightest movement couldn't be hidden from others. After Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan sacrificed themselves, Xia Xiaochan had a hard time killing a level 45 inferior manfish. However, she was also injured, but she didn't care. When it came to fighting, no one in the Thug Academy was more ruthless than Xia Xiaochan. Xia Xiaochan's heart was pounding violently. In the end, I still used the majestic mystic spell. I won't go to the 251st floor. Han Fei nodded slightly. Not only was Xia Xiaochan injured, but he was also injured. The level 45 inferior manfish was not only good at soul attacks, but also very powerful. If he didn't use the majestic mystic spell, he was basically at a disadvantage. If it weren't for his thick skin, he would have been beaten down dozens of times. Even so, Han Fei's indestructible body was penetrated. After all, his opponent was no longer a dangling fisher. Of course, the harvest was actually very abundant. Xia Xiaochan harvested a soul crystal and Han Fei harvested a demon spiritual fruit. Only then did Han Fei discover that the demon spiritual fruit didn't necessarily have to be dropped by the demon shattering vine. The inferior manfish could also drop the demon spiritual fruit. 2 days later, Han Fei's upper limit of spiritual energy was forcibly increased to 5,099 points in the battle. Later, whether he swallowed spiritual fruits or practiced the 108 spirit-absorbing war bodies, he couldn't go any further. Therefore, Han Fei became an advanced dangling fisher. At this moment, Han Fei took off the hexagon starfish from his body, pressed it on Xia Xiaochan's shoulder, and said, "Master Hexagon Starfish, don't think about running away. You know how dangerous the level 3 fishery is. You can hide for 3 to 5 years, but can you hide for 30 to 50 years? There are many capable people here. When I see you next time, I will give you a great opportunity." The Hexagon Starfish's big eyes rolled. "I won't run." Han Fei grinned. "That's good. We don't catch you as a contractual spiritual beast, but others may not." With that, he stuffed 10 ultra-quality spiritual stones into Xia Xiaochan's hand. After explaining the use of the spiritual stones, he said, "Give one to Master Hexagon Starfish occasionally. Otherwise, it will definitely talk about it every day." Then Han Fei fixed his eyes. "I'm going." Xia Xiaochan snorted. "Seeing that you are leaving, I'll give you another kiss." Han Fei knew that he probably wouldn't see Xia Xiaochan again in a short time after parting with her. Not to mention how difficult the 250th floor was. According to the rules, the 251st floor might be the most difficult place. In the entire level 3 fishery, Han Fei even felt that he might be the only one who came here. According to Xia Xiaochan's personality, she might wait for him, but not for too long. It was not that they were strangers, but that she simply thought that Han Fei could do it alone. During this period, he and Xia Xiaochan had discussed Lu Renkuang and Zhang Xuanyu. According to their comprehensive speculation, the three of them definitely wouldn't have a good time. After all, he and Xia Xiaochan were now the top targets on the Dragon Boat's wanted list. Of course, Zhang Xuanyu and the others would also become the targets of people's attention. At this moment, on the 251st floor, Han Fei became a loner again. But it didn't matter if Master Hexagon Starfish was here or not, as long as there weren't any weird creatures that he couldn't deal with. However, the steps into the sea was quite humane and the difficulty was graded, so Han Fei didn't worry about this. Before going to the next floor again, Han Fei looked at the data again. Onert Han Fei's level greater than 39, advanced dangling fisher. Spiritual energy greater than 128,526, 5999. Spiritual heritage level 5, high quality spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 30. Weapons, blue sea wandering dragon daggers, water dividing seal, blood drinking knife, main art, void breaking technique, volume 4 of void fishing, demon level, divine quality. After this breakthrough, Han Fei's strength had greatly increased, and his upper limit of spiritual energy had directly increased by 900 points. What did 900 points of upper limit of spiritual energy mean? How long did it take him to reach the upper limit of 900 points of spiritual energy? But now, with just a breakthrough, it had increased so much. As a result, his physique had also become much stronger, and the embroidery needle in his hand had become more and more suitable for him. Han Fei grabbed a sea-swallowing seashell and began to sacrifice. In the blink of an eye, when Han Fei looked at the sea-swallowing seashell again, there was only a mid-quality bamboo left in it. Shoot, Han Fei was almost dumbfounded. Although he had expected that the number of sacrifices would increase from the 251st floor onward, he didn't expect it to be so high. Han Fei estimated that this stuffed sea-swallowing seashell was worth at least 5 million. However, he sacrificed it all at once. As the water rippled, Han Fei saw a shrimp head popping out, with a long spike on it. It's not an inferior manfish? When the whole shrimp came out, Han Fei's pupils constricted slightly. A shrimp man? Han Fei suspected that he had misjudged it. I can understand if you're talking about an inferior manfish. There are a lot of them in all kinds of legends. In front of him was a standing shrimp man that was more than 1.5 meters tall. On his head, there was a conical shrimp shell, and the two eyes on the face were vertical on both sides of the head. The mouth was stacked several times as if it had several mouths. On its body, it was also wearing a layer of pale yellow, slightly sparkling battle armor. This guy had 8 arms, and there was no telling whether its lower body was a leg or not, but it was similar to a leg, except that it didn't have feet. It was using a prawn tail as its feet, yet it could still stand up. A shrimp man? Did he break into the East Ocean Dragon Palace? Now that a shrimp soldier had popped up, would a crab general show up later? When he participated in the battle in the heavenly desolate city, Han Fei once resisted the shrimp thorns at the city gate. At that time, he didn't think that those shrimps could be human beings. At this moment, Han Fei wondered if the shrimp man was the creature that shot the shrimp thorns back then. In his eyes, data appeared. Named Shrimp Demon, Low-Level Sea Demon. Introduction: a sea demon that has just matured intelligence, cruel and bloodthirsty. Because of its poor species, it may have evolved from any shrimp-type creature. It's extremely fast and good at one-shot kills. Level 45, Spiritual Energy 4413/4413, Demon Heritage Level 3, High Quality Level Awakened, Associated Spirit, Axe Crab Unabsorbables. Han Fei slightly narrowed his eyes. This thing might be more difficult to deal with than the inferior manfish. In any case, shrimps were generally more flexible than fish. It was the same for low-level fish and shrimps. He remembered that when he was in the ordinary fishery, the tentacle lobster was already a very powerful existence. While Han Fei was observing the shrimp man was also observing Han Fei. Then, Han Fei saw that 8 broken spears suddenly appeared in the shrimp man's 8 hands. Damn it! You can fight with 8 hands? Han Fei was lost for words. Was this cheating? Neza only had 6 hands, but you have 8? Hew. Han Fei certainly wouldn't wait to be killed. More than 30 blue sea wandering dragon daggers floated in front of him, and he put his hands on his waist, ready to draw them. Ah, fuck you! Han Fei felt that the shrimp man was cursing and suddenly charged at him with its 8 hands. Hew. The blue sea wandering dragon daggers instantly swept at the shrimp man. However, the shrimp man's 8 hands were waving like phantoms, and the short spears in its hands were like sabers, knocking away the blue sea wandering dragon daggers in no time. Gotcha! Han Fei had narrowed his eyes after only one clash. 2 of the blue sea wandering dragon daggers were broken, and the blood in his body surged. Is this thing really so powerful? Swoosh! Han Fei drew his daggers, and the aura of the daggers turned into dozens of meters long and slashed at the shrimp man. However, what shocked Han Fei even more was that the shrimp man's 8 hands slashed at the daggers as fast as lightning. At the same time, the shrimp man was retreating with the daggers very quickly. Han Fei looked at the attack speed that was as fast as a phantom. After hundreds of attacks, his draw technique was broken. Han Fei couldn't have felt better. You said you can withstand my sword drawing technique? I admit it. If you say you can play against me like Sun Mu, I'll accept it. However, you're nibbling away at my daggers bit by bit in such a way. I can't stand it anymore. It wasn't easy for me to practice the draw technique. Don't you want to humiliate me? Han Fei stomped on the ground and lunged forward. The blue sea wandering dragon daggers revolved crazily, and he performed the draw technique again. Han Fei sneered. Don't mention 8 hands. I'll grow 8 more for you. Come again if you can. The shrimp man seemed to be infuriated too. He darted out 3 short spears in a row and broke Han Fei's draw technique again. Then, another short spear was shot at Han Fei. A gigantic brick rose from the sky. Han Fei slapped away the stinger and smashed the whetstone at the shrimp man with all his strength. Crack! Han Fei only saw a sharp golden light piercing through the whetstone, and at this moment, there was a hole in the whetstone. Pooh! Han Fei was so shocked that he almost vomited a mouthful of blood. That's a high-quality spiritual weapon. Did I just poke a hole in your head? Bam! The shrimp man didn't feel any better either. He was blown away by Han Fei's brick and rolled hundreds of meters on the ground. However, what made Han Fei less confident was that the blue sea wandering dragon daggers were useless now. The blades only left white marks on the shrimp man's body. Usually, it would take dozens of slashes to break the shrimp man's armor. Die! Han Fei ignored the whetstone. At this moment, he was holding the water-dividing seal in his left hand and the needle in his right. He stabbed the shrimp man with the rod, and overwhelming spiritual energy burst out. Boom! The seawater exploded, and the shrimp man rolled dozens of times on the ground before it stood up. Han Fei didn't stop there. He smashed the shrimp man's head with the water-dividing seal. Why are you so fast? Why are your thorns hard? Why did you destroy my spiritual weapon? I'll smash you to death, you son of a bitch. The shrimp man was stunned too. Why is this man so fearless when he is much weaker than me? Why is he smashing me? The shrimp man couldn't get up at all. Both the water-dividing seal and the needle were too heavy. Where did this guy get such a heavy weapon? After hammering for a while, 4 of the 8 hands were broken by Han Fei. This shrimp man had been smashed beyond recognition by Han Fei. Swish! A knife light flashed, and the shrimp man's head was split open by Han Fei. Han Fei had to take action, because he suddenly saw a person watching the scene 1,000 meters away. Han Fei didn't know what to do. He thought there was no one here. Just now, he was too busy fighting the shrimp man and didn't release his senses at all. He was almost approached by the shrimp man. After the shrimp man died, a demon spiritual fruit appeared in front of Han Fei. He picked it up and threw it into Forge the Universe. At this moment, standing in the water, Han Fei looked straight at the man. Are you Chao Tian? First chapter. Asking for votes. 5,500 words. End of this chapter. Chapter 473. Han Fei had thought that Chao Tian had probably left long ago. After all, he only reached the 208th floor last time. Unexpectedly, this guy had already reached the 251st floor. When he was on the 208th floor, Han Fei thought that Chao Tian might be just SOSO. But when he reached the 251st floor, Han Fei naturally changed his opinion. Han Fei knew very well how strong the lobster demon was just now. The lobster demon turned his invincible blue sea wandering dragon daggers into a decoration. He couldn't even kill it with the draw technique. If that thing was placed on the 200th floor, it would probably be able to sweep away a group of experts. Do you know me? Chao Tian swam over, which surprised Han Fei. From what Chao Chiu said, he had always felt that Chao Tian was a cold, fierce, arrogant, and aloof genius who didn't like to talk much. However, this Chao Tian was tall and strong, with a broad face and thick eyebrows, and a vague smile on his face. He was wearing a battle suit, but Han Fei almost thought that it was a regular robe at first glance. Huh? What an ordinary person. Han Fei frowned. Are you really Chao Tian? Chao Tian nodded with a silly smile. I've never seen you before. You're not from the city. Han Fei was briefly stunned. Yes, I'm not from the city. I'm from the countryside. Chao Tian scratched his head awkwardly. That's not what I meant. Seeing Chao Tian's behavior, Han Fei was even more confused. This guy didn't fit the image of a top heavenly talent from the thousand-star city at all. Wherever Tengu stood, it would be very suitable. He was cold, domineering, and carried a big halberd. This Chao Tian didn't hold anything in his hands. His hands were just hanging there, and he would smirk now and then. This guy didn't look like an expert at all. After a moment of silence, Han Fei asked, "Are you done?" Chao Tian nodded with a smile. "I'm done." Han Fei was confused. "Then why don't you go to the next floor?" Chao Tian replied frankly, "I'm practicing my fist speed." Han Fei was briefly stunned. "Practicing your fist speed? How long have you been here?" Chao Tian smiled. 3 days. Han Fei couldn't help but say, "Don't you want to know other opportunities on the steps into the sea? You treat it as a training ground?" Chao Tian said bluntly, "Opportunities will come when they come. But you smell like Chiu. When it came to Chao Tian's eyes lit up. He looked at Han Fei as if waiting for an answer. Han Fei grinned. "Didn't Chao say that he was not on good terms with you?" Chao Tian smiled bitterly. "He doesn't like me, but he's my brother. No one can touch him, not a single one. What do you have to do with Chiu? I promised Chao that I would help him kill Sun Mu, Yang Du, Li Hai, Li Baizhou, and Yi Baiyu. What do you think my relationship with him is?" When Chao Tian heard this, he immediately became honest again. "That's right, that's Chiu. Then you can go. Goodbye." Han Fei? Han Fei was speechless. What the hell is going on? Don't you know that Chao wants to kill you the most? Chao Tian grinned. "Yes, I do." Han Fei asked, "What? I'm quite curious." Chao Tian's smile became even wider. "He just said it. Chiu never kills people. As for why he didn't tell you, you don't need to know." Han Fei snorted. "I don't want to know. At this moment, he should be on the 201st floor with 2 swords. Chao Tian turned around and nodded. "Then he should have gone back." Seeing Chao Tian's straightforwardness, Han Fei was taken aback for a moment and then smiled. This elder brother really knows his younger brother. Not only Chao Tian, but Han Fei also felt that Chao had gone back. With his weak strength, he had to rely on his spiritual beasts and contractual spiritual beasts to go to the 151st floor, not to mention the 201st floor. Han Fei wasn't sure whether Chao Tian was pretending to be stupid or he was really like this. However, Han Fei suddenly had a bad idea and shouted, "Hey! Chao Tian!" Chao Tian looked back. "What's up?" Han Fei smiled. "Chao asked me to kill you, and I took some money from him. Since I'm paid, I have to do things for him. Let's not talk about whether I can beat you or not. Now that I've met you, I have to fight you, right?" Chao Tian smiled. But Han Fei also smiled. "Okay, then let's make a move. After that, you practice your fists, and I'll look for my opportunities. How about that?" Chao Tian nodded. But fair enough. It wasn't that Han Fei wanted to fight, but that he wanted to know how strong Chao Tian, who was said to be a god, was. So Han Fei directly used the majestic mystic spell. The seawater around him trembled, and terrifying energy flowed on the surface of his body. Chao Tian didn't seem to be slow either. However, Chao Tian didn't use any weapons, but stood on the ground, slightly bowed, and as soon as he clenched his fists, the seawater beside him exploded. Swish. As soon as the light of the draw technique appeared, Chao Tian punched out like a dragon, and a roar exploded in the seawater. Boom! With just one blow, the seawater within 100 meters surged. Han Fei retreated hundreds of meters, and a trace of blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. Chao Tian was a little better than Han Fei, only retreating less than a dozen meters. However, there was a knife mark on his fist, so deep that the bone could be seen. After a while, Chao Tian put away his fist and said with a smile, "I lost. I used 13 punches." The corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. What the fuck? Was that the speed of his punches just now? Why did I only see 7 punches? "Goodbye." Han Fei put away the blood-drinking knife, said these words, and went straight to the next floor. He was already very sure that Chao Tian was strong, very strong. Undoubtedly, whether it was Yang Diu, Sun Mu, or Yi Baiyu, none of them was a match for Chao Tian. With that blow just now, even if it was Sun Mu's immortal slaying formation, he could still break it. However, Chao Tian only used 13 punches and broke it. This was not a matter of how many punches he had, but that he could only fight evenly with Chao Tian after using the majestic mystic spell as an advanced dangling fisher. No, although Chao Tian said that he lost, Han Fei didn't really think that he had won. Han Fei was very sure that Chao Tian should have more powerful trump cards. This was not a good feeling. After roughly understanding Chao Tian's strength, Han Fei realized that he was not invincible yet, so there was no need to fight anymore. As soon as he entered the 252nd floor, Han Fei didn't go to sacrifice but directly entered Forge the Universe. In the battle against the lobster demon just now, Han Fei knew that the Blue Sea Wandering Dragon daggers had no advantage at all. Besides, since he explored the level 3 fishery, he had lost dozens of Blue Sea Wandering Dragon daggers. This obviously showed that mid-quality spiritual weapons could no longer keep up with Han Fei's needs. Han Fei needed a new set of knives. Originally, Han Fei planned to refine a set of million knife art with the remaining materials after he finished the steps into the sea. However, it seemed that he had to refine them in advance. There were a total of 386 pieces of ultra-quality materials, plus more than 2,900 pieces of high-quality materials, not to mention 142 high-quality spiritual weapons and 68 high-quality battlesuits. This was a terrible number. It was so terrible that if he refined all these things into ultra-quality weapons, he would lose the more than 200 million points of spiritual energy he had. Of course, Han Fei was reluctant to spend so many spiritual weapons at once. His bottom line was to use 1/3. After all, Han Fei needed more than weapons. In the future, after he became a dangling fisher, he would need 100 million points of spiritual energy just to deduce the 5th level of void fishing. This forced him to be frugal. In Forge the Universe, Han Fei threw materials into the demon purification pot numbly. One day later, 24 ultra-quality spiritual sabers were refined, consuming 12 million points of spiritual energy. 3 days later, another 72 ultra-quality spiritual sabers were refined, consuming 36 million points of spiritual energy. When Han Fei refined the 99th ultra-quality spiritual saber, only 8 of the 386 ultra-quality materials and 1,798 high-quality materials were left. Another day later, Han Fei walked out of Forge the Universe. Wearing a green ultra-quality battle suit, with 99 ultra-quality spiritual sabers floating around him, an ultra-quality whetstone in his left hand, the blood-drinking knife on his waist, an ultra-quality fishing rod on his back, and the Blue Sea Wandering Dragon bow on his right hand had also changed. It was also ultra-quality. The name hadn't changed and Han Fei didn't bother to think about it. Han Fei grinned. Now, what I'm wearing should be comparable to Chao Qiu's, right? Han Fei even felt that his clothes might be more valuable than Chao Qiu's. From this moment on, his equipment had been replaced with cannons. Of course, the price Han Fei paid was not small. This time, the large-scale weapon refining consumed a total of 52 million points of spiritual energy. Originally, Han Fei wondered if he should melt the high-quality spiritual weapons and refine them into ultra-quality spiritual weapons. But then he realized that not only was his spiritual energy consumed, but his wealth was also being consumed rapidly. Obviously, this was not a good deal. So Han Fei didn't do it. At this moment, Han Fei was holding a sea-swallowing seashell in his hand and grinned. Sacrifice. In front of Han Fei was a level 46 inferior manfish. At this moment, knife light and mystic light were everywhere. The power of the million knife art was undoubtedly revealed at this moment. An inferior manfish of the hanging fisher level couldn't approach Han Fei at all at this moment. In just a moment, this inferior manfish had no less than 100 wounds all over its body. No matter how strong it was, whenever it got close, Han Fei would knock it back with a backhand brick. Han Fei wasn't sure if the appearance of the lobster demon was a coincidence. After meeting the lobster demon on the 251st floor, he had already reached the 278th floor. During this period, he encountered a lobster demon once, a demon-shattering vine 3 times, and an inferior manfish once. There were only 2 kinds of items left, namely soul crystals and demon spiritual fruits. Soul crystals were relatively rare, and demon spiritual fruits were the most common. Out of the 10 sacrifices, he gave demon spiritual fruits 8 times. Han Fei had eaten almost 30 demon spiritual fruits and felt more and more refreshed. But because he didn't have any soul crystals, he didn't know how much more his perception range could be increased. However, he vaguely had a feeling that his perception range could be increased soon. On the 281st floor, Han Fei sacrificed nearly 2 sea-swallowing seashells to summon a creature. Han Fei's eyelids shivered when he saw the creature. A mermaid? Han Fei felt that his eyes were dazzled, and then an ugly woman appeared in front of him. At this moment, the mermaid was baring her teeth. Those weren't teeth at all. They were a row of hacksaws, and the teeth were terrifyingly sharp. However, different from the inferior manfish, the creature before him had much clearer facial features. She had a flat nose, human eyes, and vertical pupils. Her forehead was a little wrinkled, but she had long, flowing hair that reached her waist. The problem was her body. Her upper body was mostly covered in fish scales, and only a small part of her body was similar to human skin. As for her lower body, it was really a fish tail. A blue tail with glittering scales. It's really a mermaid. Data appeared in his eyes. Name: half mermaid, regular sea demon. Introduction: a sea demon that has just awakened intelligence. It's a species that opposes human beings and is good at mermaid tactics. Because of the different tactics they practice, their combat characteristics are different. Level 46, Spiritual Energy 1, 221/4, 611 Demon Heritage Level 4, Low Quality Level, Becoming a Demon, Companion Spirit Ice Pattern Lobster Unabsorbable. Han Fei was stunned. This thing was much more advanced than the inferior manfish. It could be seen from its demon heritage alone. The most powerful inferior manfish he had seen so far only had a level 3, high-quality demon heritage. However, this half-mermaid had already reached level 4. Also, why was this thing called a half-mermaid? Could it be that there were complete mermaids? If there was, then would a complete mermaid be like the one in the legend? With a beautiful face, flowing long hair, jade-like arms, and a flawless body? Gulp. Han Fei didn't dare to imagine how beautiful that picture would be. When he was in the undersea city, Han Fei saw the inferior manfish for the first time. In this Steps into the Sea, he saw the legendary mermaid. No matter whether she was beautiful or not, he could call her that. He felt that such a race probably existed outside the level 3 fishery. At this moment, Han Fei wondered what kind of place the unknown place was. Were there many of such races in that place? Han Fei found that when he was in the level 1 and level 2 fishery, he didn't feel it. However, after arriving at the level 3 fishery, he seemed to be getting closer to the real ocean step by step. If the 3-level fishery was only the territory of human beings, then the 3-level fishery was the territory of human beings. Then was the unknown place a forbidden place that human beings couldn't encircle? Suddenly, a voice brought Han Fei back to himself. Human. Race. When the mermaid saw Han Fei, she panicked at first, then looked around at the environment, and finally spat out these 2 words to Han Fei in an extremely hoarse voice. That kind of voice was very strange, with a strange vibration, as if saying the word, human, was extremely difficult for this mermaid. Han Fei was shocked. You can still speak? Hiss. The mermaid stopped talking as if speaking was very difficult for her. So she opened her mouth and hissed at Han Fei with her full mouth full of sharp teeth. As the mermaid hissed, her hair, her tail, and the scales on her arms were all shaking. Suddenly, a series of strange sound waves burst out from the mermaid's mouth. Round after round, Han Fei, who was caught off guard, was directly blasted hundreds of meters away by the terrifying sound waves. He felt that his ears were warm, and they were bleeding because of the strange sound waves. Damn it, what the hell is this? Han Fei didn't dare to be careless, because the mermaid had already rushed over at an extremely fast speed, and her weird swimming posture reminded Han Fei of a snake demon. However, the snake demon in the Calabash Brothers was very beautiful and alluring. However, this mermaid, if one didn't look at her face and only looked at her body, she might really be an enchanting creature. But once one looked at her face and the scales on her body, she was no longer enchanting. Han Fei was slightly stunned, and then he saw thousands of scales and darts shooting at him, turning into streams of light. Seeing that the opponent was so fierce and was determined to kill him, Han Fei didn't dare to be careless at all. In an instant, 100 knives were shot out, and thousands of knives rolled up like a long dragon, colliding with those scales in the blink of an eye. Clank, clank, clank. A large number of scales were blasted away. However, Han Fei didn't see the mermaid stop at all. Instead, it sped up. In the seawater, Han Fei saw a tide of different colors surging at him. An ultra-quality spiritual weapon was fierce enough, wasn't it? However, when it was pounced on by this surging tide, it became unstable and its speed was less than 1/3 of its normal speed. Wow, what kind of weird abilities are these? As soon as Han Fei took out the blood-drinking knife and activated the majestic mystic spell, he slashed at it with a swish. The blue tide was cut in half, and the terrifying knife light slashed straight at the mermaid. There was another wave of terrifying screams, and Han Fei hurriedly dodged. So, Han Fei saw that his attack with all his strength turned into an ordinary knife light and fell on the mermaid. Damn it! It's so strong. In the blink of an eye, the blood-drinking knife didn't do anything. With a thought, Han Fei turned the surrounding seawater into knives. The infinity water. He didn't know what level it was or whether it was a weapon, but Han Fei knew that it was his strongest trump card at present. If even the infinity water couldn't kill the opponent, Han Fei could only exhaust the opponent to death by consuming spiritual energy. When the infinity water covered the mermaid, Han Fei could hear her roar. Then, a big lobster appeared. Unfortunately, the lobster only appeared for a while before it was crushed by the infinity water. When the seawater gurgled with blood, Han Fei put away the infinity water. The mermaid, together with the big lobster with a broken carapace, lay dying in the water. Han Fei walked up to her. To be honest, I'm in a complicated mood now. Logically speaking, I don't have any aversion to intelligent creatures. But why do you have such a strong killing intent against human beings? Hiss! The mermaid lay on the ground, her scales all shattered, and her whole body was covered with knife wounds. But even at this moment, she still tried to bare her teeth at Han Fei. After nearly 100 minutes, the mermaid slowly died. Han Fei stood next to her during the whole process. Just now, Han Fei sensed intense hatred, especially the look in her eyes. Although it was slightly different from human eyes, the intense hatred in her eyes could be sensed even by an idiot. After the mermaid disappeared, the water ball popped up. Han Fei saw that it was no longer a demon's spiritual fruit, but a translucent bright blue crystal. Data popped up in his eyes. Name a life stone. Introduction. This is a strange stone that may be born when the Sea Clan dies. It contains tremendous vitality. Ordinary people can live 100 years longer. Dangling fishers can live 10 years longer. Hanging fishers and hidden fishers can live 1 year longer. Oh my God! Han Fei was dumbfounded. He had never seen such a thing before. Ordinary people could live 100 years longer? Dangling fishers could live 10 years longer? This thing must be a priceless treasure. Han Fei wasn't sure how much this thing that could be produced was worth. It was life. If this was seen by others, it would definitely be priceless. Even if they could buy it, they wouldn't be able to afford it. Han Fei reached out to grab the life stone. However, the moment he touched it, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his wrist. Shoot! Han Fei looked down, only to see that the demon purification pot had come out. The second chapter. Asking for votes. The author said, there are only 2 chapters today, but they're both 2-in-1 chapters. It's not an explosion. The plot of the steps into the sea is coming to an end. End of this chapter. Chapter 474. The moment the demon purification pot came out, Han Fei knew that something big had happened. The demon purification pot wouldn't have come out if he hadn't needed refining. However, at this moment, the demon purification pot was floating above his wrist. Then, the vine leaf on the demon purification pot, which Han Fei thought was just a decoration, suddenly grew longer and pierced into the life stone. Han Fei? Han Fei quickly shouted, "Hey, I haven't warmed up yet. What are you doing?" Before Han Fei could stop it, the light blue life stone was turning white at a visible speed. In less than 3 seconds, the life stone had turned into a transparent stone. Then with a crack, it shattered into pieces. Han Fei was amused. "Brother, I can see that you need this thing. But I won't rob you of it. Why are you so excited?" After absorbing the life stone, the demon purification pot didn't seem to have changed at all. The only change was that the tiny leaf shook a little. Then, it sank back into Han Fei's wrist and turned into a tattoo. Han Fei. Just when Han Fei thought it was over, suddenly, the center of his eyebrows flashed, and little black and little white came out. Han Fei exclaimed in surprise. "How can you two come out on your own?" However, as soon as little white opened its mouth, it disappeared into Han Fei's body with little black. At that moment, a black light flashed in Han Fei's eyes. Then, his eyes turned black and white, and the yin-yang divine eyes appeared. Han Fei's body suddenly straightened, and his previously expressionless face became expressionless. However, Han Fei was struggling at the center of his eyebrows. His consciousness didn't disappear, but he suddenly had a desire. He felt that his body was extremely empty. That feeling, it was like hunger. He wanted to eat something, and that thing was the life stone. To be exact, it was the life power on the life stone. Driven by this desire, Han Fei appeared on the 282nd floor. He numbly took out his sea-swallowing seashell and offered it. Then, another mermaid appeared. But this time, Han Fei's reaction was extremely fast. He slowly raised a finger. A drop of water appeared in Han Fei's mind, and then the drop of water turned into a beam of light. Like a meteor streaking across the sky, it flashed past Han Fei's eyes. And on Han Fei's finger, almost at the same time, a flash of light swept across the seawater, leaving a long white mark. Han Fei felt that he had attacked in a daze. Then, before the mermaid could even attack, it was killed by him with one blow. "Fuck your mother?" Han Fei felt that it was a bit scary. At this moment, his consciousness seemed to be divided into 2 parts. One was empty and ethereal, as if it had instinctively stretched out a finger and launched an attack. Part of him was still rational, which shocked and panicked him. He was panicking because why was he on the verge of losing control after merging with Little White and Little Black? What shocked him was that, for the first time, he found that the infinity water could be used in this way. Like a flash of profound light, killing the enemy in the blink of an eye? Unfortunately, this time, his consciousness began to blur. In a daze, Han Fei felt that every once in a while, a stimulant would be injected into his body, making him feel refreshed. Such a state happened 19 times. Han Fei was counting silently, judging how many floors he had passed by the sudden sense of excitement in his memory. "Floor!" As if suddenly awakened, Han Fei suddenly yelled out. As a result, what greeted him was a mouthful of seawater, which almost choked him. Han Fei quickly held his breath, took out a bag of air, and took a few breaths before he recovered. When his eyes gradually became clear, Han Fei suddenly saw that in front of him was a round altar. And he was standing in front of the steps under the altar. This was a broken altar. The stones of the steps in front of him had been broken in some places. On both sides of the altar, there were 2 rows of white, curved, thick fish bones, standing symmetrically. Among them, some of the bones had been broken and were lying on the altar. And Han Fei, at this moment, was looking at the table in the center of the altar. On the table, there was a dazzling cup-shaped crystal tray and 2 flat trays. If Mr. Hexagon Starfish were here, it would definitely climb up crazily and grab those trays. But Han Fei was sure that those trays were definitely not made of ordinary materials. On the cup-shaped crystal tray, Han Fei saw a red spiritual fruit. Gudu! At this moment, Han Fei's brain almost crashed. At this time, he didn't pay much attention to how he came here, but was attracted by the offerings in front of him. Gudu! Han Fei swallowed again. So, the 300th floor is the deepest part of the steps into the sea? He looked around and found that this place was only as big as the altar. Extending out 100 meters, it was a seal. Han Fei was about to go up the stairs. However, as soon as he moved his feet, he seemed to kick something. Looking down, Han Fei was shocked to find that he was standing on a pile of bones. Fuck, Gudu. What do I mean? Am I not the first person to come here? How many people have been here before? Looking at the ground that was almost paved with bones under his feet, Han Fei didn't feel good. Han Fei raised his hand, looked at the motionless demon purification pot on his wrist, and said helplessly, "Move. Why don't you move now? I don't know how you got me here. But it's almost time, but you don't move. What do you mean? Do you want me to go up and get it?" Han Fei was just about to raise his foot, but he suddenly had an ominous feeling in his heart. Han Fei stood up straight again, his body shivering slightly. He looked at the steps in front of him. There were only 8 floors. Counting the floor on the ground, there were a total of 9 floors. The steps into the sea, the steps into the sea. Are they the steps from above, or the 9 floors from here? Although he was in the sea, Han Fei felt that his forehead and back were sweating from time to time. His eyelids began to twitch unconsciously. Han Fei looked at the demon purification pot on his wrist again. So, even if you send me here, you can't go up, right? You can't go up, so you want me to go up? Han Fei raised his head and glanced at the spiritual fruit placed on the altar. I really want it. Every day, tens of thousands of people sought opportunities here at the steps into the sea. Who could have known that the true opportunity lay at the bottom? The real steps were also here. Son of a bitch. Master Calabash, you are the master? You let me come here because you are sure I can get it, right? Move a few times for me. Promise me that I'll go up. The demon purification pot still didn't respond, but Han Fei was so nervous that he was sweating all over. How could he not be nervous? Suddenly, Han Fei had an idea, and his face lit up with joy. In his hand, a mirror appeared. The mirror of icy salt, a low-quality divine weapon, could copy any creature below the level of a hidden fissure. However, this mirror could only be used 3 times. Before, Han Fei was reluctant to use it even once when he risked his life. But at this moment, Han Fei was going to use it. Yes, he was very sure that he had to use it. At this moment, an ultra-quality battle suit appeared on Han Fei's body. At the same time, with the help of the majestic mystic spell, both his physique and defense should be in the strongest state. Han Fei held the mirror of icy salt, and with a thought, an identical version of himself appeared beside him. This feeling was very strange. When he fought with himself on the white mist salt algae, he didn't feel anything. But at this moment, Han Fei felt that this incarnation seemed to be connected with his mind, as if a connection had been established. However, there was only a connection, and he couldn't actively control this incarnation. Han Fei tentatively said, "Squat down." The incarnation squatted directly on the ground, expressionless and motionless. "Stand up." The incarnation got up and looked ahead, still motionless. Han Fei looked himself up and down. When he was cold, he was quite handsome. It seemed that Zhang Xuanyu would have one more opponent in the future. Han Fei said in his heart, "Go up and bring down those 3 plates for me." When Han Fei issued this order, his heart couldn't help but tighten. Please succeed. If something happened to the incarnation, something would definitely happen to him too. The incarnation raised 1 foot and put it on the first step. However, a scene that made Han Fei speechless appeared. The incarnation had 1 foot on the ground and 1 foot on the step. His body was trembling, and there seemed to be an invisible, mysterious force blocking him. When the incarnation tremblingly raised the other foot on this step, a crack suddenly appeared on his calf. Chapter 475. In Han Fei's expectant gaze, this incarnation climbed the second step, which seemed to be easier than climbing the first step. However, when the incarnation climbed the third step, Han Fei, who was standing under the platform, suddenly staggered. He felt that his brain suddenly went black, as if he had severe anemia, and he almost couldn't stand still. Fuck, that's an incarnation. Did something happen to the incarnation have something to do with me? Han Fei was speechless. Isn't the incarnation made of salt? Is it because of the telepathy? But no matter how telepathy I have with him, I don't know what he has experienced up there. When the incarnation climbed the fourth step, Han Fei suddenly covered his head with one hand, and blue veins popped out on his neck. At that moment, he seemed to see something. It was no longer black. His brain suddenly turned white, and there seemed to be a flash of light. Unfortunately, the picture flashed too fast, just for a moment. Han Fei didn't have time to react at all, and the picture was gone. At this moment, the incarnation had reached the edge of the fifth step. Han Fei seemed to have expected it, and the next moment, another picture flashed. Old Bai. Han Fei's face was livid. At that moment, he seemed to see Old Bai's face. Why Old Bai? What does Old Bai have to do with the steps into the sea? Han Fei covered his head and squatted on the ground. He knew that when the incarnation walked up to the sixth step, a similar situation would inevitably happen. Sure enough, in the instant of the splitting headache, the picture in Han Fei's eyes became a little clearer, but it was still too fast. He seemed to see a flash of knife light. Fuck, what the fuck? Why are they all instantaneous pictures? Can't you give me a complete picture? Han Fei sat on the ground. When the incarnation climbed to the seventh step, he finally saw a complete picture. Old Bai stood in the sky, looking at him. Why is Old Bai still holding a knife in his hand? No, where did Old Bai's blood come from? Han Fei raised his head and said to the incarnation, "Go on, go up to the eighth step, and then go up." Once again, Han Fei saw Old Bai standing in the sky. And under Old Bai's feet was a large area of houses, and the knife in his hand seemed to be chopping, and a huge knife light swept across the air. Kacha! Suddenly, Han Fei raised his head, only to see that the two calves of the incarnation had been shattered, and the lower half of its body had turned into a pile of white salt. However, the incarnation did not know what pain was. It moved forward as Han Fei ordered. However, when his hand touched the last layer of the platform, the seawater trembled slightly, as if the incarnation had suffered a huge impact. What? The entire incarnation shattered at this moment, turning into fine white salt particles, and then directly disappeared into the seawater. Han Fei was shocked. In that instant, goosebumps rose all over his body. Gulp. What the fuck? Is it that dangerous? Even such a powerful incarnation died? Han Fei waved his arm. Master Calabash, help. I can't handle it. The demon purification pot blinked, and Han Fei was overjoyed. Do you want to get it yourself? After waiting for a long time, seeing no response from the demon purification pot, Han Fei decided to have a feast in Forge the Universe. However, he couldn't enter Forge the Universe anymore. Han Fei said angrily, "You're forcing me to do this, aren't you? You must be forcing me. You just want me to do it, right? Remember, this is the level 3 fishery. How many people can come to this place? Okay, then I'll do it. If I die, you'll be buried here." Seeing that the demon purification pot didn't respond, Han Fei frowned. "Come on, I'm not afraid of you." Gulp. Han Fei took out a large bag of air and then took a few deep breaths. What was the purpose of breaking into the steps into the sea? Wasn't it for the opportunity? Others didn't even have the qualification to see this opportunity, but now that the opportunity was right in front of him, he didn't dare to go up? How could that be? So, Han Fei raised his foot and impulsively stepped on the first step. To be honest, Han Fei was a person full of adventurous spirit, and this kind of adventurous spirit was almost fanatical. When Han Fei came to this world, it was because he had a mania. Therefore, Han Fei's impulsive action at this time was just impulsive without thinking. No reaction? Han Fei was taken aback. When his incarnation stepped on the first step just now, his calf was cracked. Why did he feel like he was stepping on an ordinary step? Han Fei subconsciously raised his other foot. However, as soon as he lifted his foot, Han Fei suddenly felt a mountain-like pressure coming at him. The scene in front of him suddenly changed. He didn't see anything, only felt that his body was trembling, and a terrifying coercion fell on him. Han Fei immediately confirmed that this was a kind of coercion, but he didn't know where it came from. Anyway, as soon as this coercion came out, he only felt that his hair stood on end. Immediately afterward, a series of voices came to Han Fei's ears, and the source was Old Bai. Hurry up! That coarse rebuke seemed to reverberate between heaven and earth. The dark veil in front of Han Fei seemed to be suddenly lifted. At this moment he was between heaven and earth, high in the sky. Han Fei looked down and found that he was at least 1,000 meters above the ground. When he looked back, he saw that little gold had been attached to him. Its huge wings were spread, and there was still blood dripping from them. Suddenly, a knife light spanning a kilometer swept over the top of Han Fei's head. Han Fei looked up in horror and found that there was a battle in the sky. Old Bai was being besieged by a group of people, all of whom were fierce. He was running, and he didn't even know why he was running. Someone was chasing him. One flash stone after another was exploding. Han Fei felt that he appeared in many places. There were flames of war everywhere, and he couldn't even see those people's faces clearly. Suddenly, Han Fei saw Luo Xiaobai standing 1,000 meters away from him, expressionless and emotionless. Han Fei shouted, "Xiaobai, run!" Seeing that Luo Xiaobai didn't run, Han Fei panicked and rushed to her. But he saw that Luo Xiaobai was shaking her head as if refusing him. Knife light and sword light flashed around him, and Han Fei was hit hard again and again. Then, Han Fei felt that his vision went dark as if he had been hit by something. His whole body was like a meteor streaking across the sky, falling down. At that moment, he felt that his bones were shattered and his internal organs were damaged. He vomited mouthfuls of blood. At that moment, Han Fei sensed death. He felt that he was going to die. He felt physically and mentally exhausted. He wanted to sleep and just let his body fall. Suddenly, Han Fei felt a sharp pain on his wrist. He suddenly woke up and was shocked to find that he was already on the altar. Chapter 476. Han Fei was woken up by the demon purification pot. Just now, he was almost immersed in that environment. Old Bai, Xiao Zhan, Wen Renyu, Zhang Xuanyu, they all seemed to be dying. Han Fei was desperate at that time. When the stab of the demon purification pot appeared, hope arose in his heart. He was surprised to find that Old Bai was not here. Where did Zhang Xuanyu come from? When Han Fei opened his eyes, he had already reached the top of the 9th step, and his hands were dripping with blood. His mouth was full of a strong smell of blood. Pooh! Han Fei vomited a mouthful of blood, feeling that his internal organs were rolling and his body was almost broken. It's just a step. Do you have to do this? Han Fei hurriedly cast the divine healing technique on himself. At the same time, he grabbed a spiritual fruit and stuffed it into his mouth. In addition, there were some healing pills, all of which he poured directly into his mouth. It was not until 2 hours later that Han Fei finally felt better. He wanted to get up, but as soon as he sat up straight, he found that his body was creaking. How fucking injured was I just now? Why do I feel like I was beaten? Han Fei looked at the steps behind him. The steps didn't change at all, but they were indescribably weird in Han Fei's eyes. He didn't understand why he would see the Thug Academy when he walked down the steps into the sea. Was what he saw in the past? Of course, he knew the tragedy of the Thug Academy 30 years ago, and countless heavenly talents died. But if this was the tragedy of 30 years ago, why did he see Zhang Xuanyu, Li Renkuang, and Luo Xiaobai? By the way, I don't see Xia Xiaochan. Why isn't Xia Xiaochan here? Han Fei cast the divine healing technique on himself again. Therefore, this environment actually had a loophole. If the four of them were here, there was no reason why Xia Xiaochan wasn't here. But Han Fei spat at the steps. Damn it, it almost killed me. Han Fei didn't rush to get up and check the offerings on the altar. Anyway, the offerings and the altar had been here for so many years, and these offerings wouldn't run away by themselves. On the contrary, the more critical the situation, the more impulsive it was. Especially now that he was still injured. If there were any problems with the sacrificial offerings, he would be the one to suffer. It took Han Fei another 3 hours to fully recover from his injuries. When he was absolutely sure that he was in peak condition, he stood up again. Immediately, Han Fei wanted to summon the ultra-quality battle suit. However, with a thought in his mind, Han Fei saw a ragged set of clothes with holes everywhere on his body. Han Fei? How did my clothes become like this? Han Fei was dumbfounded. This is an ultra-quality battle suit. It was refined with dozens of materials and more than 500,000 points of spiritual energy. Just the cost of the materials alone was an astonishing figure. However, he had only walked 9 steps, and it was broken to this extent? Han Fei was secretly shocked. What would happen if he didn't have this ultra-quality battle suit? It took him an hour to reforge the supreme-grade battle suit and put it on. Only then did Han Fei stand in front of the table where the offerings were placed. This time, Han Fei saw clearly that there were 3 items placed in the center of the table. One in the center, on a cup-shaped tray, there was a red spiritual fruit. To Han Fei's surprise, he couldn't see any information about this fruit at all. The demon purification pot seemed to have lost its effect. On the tray to the left of the spiritual fruit, there was a finger bone. This finger bone was like jade. Han Fei wasn't sure what kind of bone it was, but it looked like a human finger bone. However, how could a human finger bone be jade? The demon purification pot still couldn't see any information. Han Fei didn't think too much about it and turned his head to the right of the spiritual fruit. There was a black bead on that tray, and there was also no information. However, the bead looked like a black pearl, only the size of a thumb. Compared with the other 2, it didn't look special at all. Han Fei took a few steps forward, planning to collect these 3 ultra-quality items first. Whether he knew them or not, these were definitely top-quality treasures. Just look at the bones at the bottom of the stairs. How many people died here to get them? Which one of the people who could come here was mediocre? Even Chao Tian, a recognized genius, only made it to the 251st floor. Even if he was cultivating, Han Fei estimated that with his strength, it would be difficult for him to fight until the mermaids appeared. Han Fei didn't think he could pass the last 20 floors easily. When Han Fei walked to the altar and was about to take action, he was suddenly stunned. He was standing in front of the table just now and didn't notice it at all. At this moment, he was standing beside the table. He was shocked to find that the first thing he saw was not the bright red spirit fruit in the middle, nor was it the finger bone or the black bead. Instead, it was the wooden decorative shelf behind the 3 treasures. The decorative shelf was shaped like the shelf where ordinary people put decorative knives, but it was much smaller. On this shelf, there were no swords or sabers on it. Instead, there was a vine with a leaf on it. After seeing the green vine, Han Fei's eyes widened. There was a layer of light and shadow flowing on the green vine. Even after countless years, it was still bright and lustrous. The question was, wasn't this the vine of the demon purification pot? Han Fei raised his hand and looked at the demon purification pot in his hand. He quickly opened his palm, and with a thought, a small calabash appeared in his palm. Chapter 477. The demon purification pot seemed to have become different with the addition of a vine. Han Fei immediately felt that his head trembled. It was like inhaling the cool scent of mint. He was greatly refreshed, as if something had suddenly been added to his brain. Han Fei subconsciously looked at his own data. Sure enough, there was a slight change. Owner Han Fate level greater than 39, advanced dangling fisher, spiritual energy greater than 128,526, 5999. Spiritual power, 999,999, perception range greater than 5,000 meters, spiritual heritage, level 5, high quality spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 30, main art, void breaking technique, volume 4 of void fishing, demon level, divine quality. There was no information about weapons, but the data of spiritual power and perception range popped up. That was quite interesting. Han Fei knew that his perception range had reached 5,000 meters, but he never knew how much spiritual power he had. However, when he saw the 999 data, Han Fei knew that it was a bottleneck. However, although Han Fei knew how much spiritual power was, what was the use of it? He knew his own, but he didn't know other people's. If there was no comparison, what was the point of this information? Han Fei didn't pay more attention to his own information, because the ground was shaking again. Compared with exploring the secrets of the demon purification pot, treasures were more important. He could check the demon purification pot at any time, but he couldn't allow anything to happen to these treasures. Han Fei suddenly opened his eyes and was about to grab the 3 treasures on the table. Han Fei's first sight was naturally the red spiritual fruit. After all, it was so dazzling and attractive. Suddenly, he found that new data popped up in front of his eyes. Named Heritage Stealing Fruit. Introduction. This is the legendary taboo fruit that can steal the heaven's meridians and add them to one's body. Levels heaven qualities, divine quality, spiritual energy greater than 1 million points. Effect, steal the spiritual heritage of heaven and change one's fate. Note, only suitable for fishers. If anyone else takes it, they will be burned to death by the heavenly fire. Fuck, Han Fei was shocked, and then he burst into fury. When he saw the words, heritage stealing fruit, and the introduction, Han Fei was overwhelmed. How fucking awesome must the spirit fruit be to steal the heavenly meridians? In the past, Han Fei had only heard of stealing the fate of a country and stealing the dragon chi. Han Fei had never thought of such a thing. He thought it was just a gimmick and a legend. But now he believed it. There was actually such a heaven-defying spirit fruit in this world. At that moment, Han Fei felt that he was going to rise and become a real genius, a demon, and an unparalleled heavenly talent. However, the explanation that a fisher could be used was like a bolt of lightning that struck Han Fei's head. Han Fei's crazy smile froze. Do you know what kind of grievance it is to have a poor spiritual pulse? Son of a bitch, a fisher? Don't tell me I have to destroy my own cultivation? Is there something wrong with my brain? My heart hurts. My heart hurts. I can't breathe. But regardless of whether it was useful or not, this was a heaven-defying treasure. It was absolutely impossible to leave it here. Han Fei was going to stuff it into the demon purification pot. Putting away the heritage-stealing fruit, Han Fei immediately turned his eyes to the jade-like phalanx. In his eyes, information emerged. Named Sky-Dissecting Finger. Introduction. The phalanx of a king-level master has been corroded by time and can't be integrated into the body, so it can only become a divine weapon. Activated by a large amount of spiritual energy, it can barely exert the power of a king-level master. Quality, ultra-quality divine weapon, current state. Usage once, not recast, unrefined. Note, it consumes too much spiritual energy. Don't try it if you have less than 10 million points of spiritual energy. Fuck, Han Fei was in a daze again. It was said that there were divine weapons in the steps into the sea, and Han Fei thought there should be. However, he didn't expect that a divine weapon would be like this. Han Fei didn't know how strong a king-level master was. However, Han Fei knew that the void fishing art was created by 9 king-level masters. It could be seen how precious this phalanx was. This was the ultimate life-saving weapon. As long as the opponent wasn't a king, this finger bone could easily shatter the attack of a king-stage powerhouse. Goodoo! Han Fei hurriedly put away the jade finger. This thing was awesome. It could kill whoever it met. In the end, Han Fei's heart was trembling. These 2 treasures almost scared him to death. What about the 3rd treasure? Han Fei swallowed and subconsciously moved his eyes over. Then, Han Fei was dumbfounded. Data emerged in his eyes. Art of Invincibility, unrated. Introduction. A fist technique created by an unknown expert. This is a wonderful fist technique that was constantly comprehended during battles in troubled times. Those who cultivate this fist technique can shake the sea and shake the sky with their fists. Shortcoming. It requires the cultivator to have a strong body, a tough soul, an unyielding mind, and an invincible will. Deduction. Cannot be deduced, can only be comprehended. Note. Anyone who can create an invincible technique believes in invincibility, so the technique they use is invincible. It can fight any technique in the world, so it's unrated. Gudu. Han Fei swallowed and was dumbfounded. It was too powerful. Was there really an invincible technique in this world? From the information, Han Fei could tell that this seemed to be the strongest combat technique that surpassed all other techniques. Because cultivators only had one belief: I am invincible. If not me, then who else can? Han Fei hurried to grab the black pearl. He couldn't miss such an invincible divine technique. If it was another time, another place, these three treasures together would be enough to create a peerless powerhouse. Think about it. When you were a fisher, you stole the heaven's heritage with the heritage-stealing fruit, practiced the art of invincibility with your talent, and kept the life-saving means of a king-level expert. Even an idiot could be transformed into a genius, right? Han Fei wondered if the three items on the altar were specially prepared for someone. Fortunately, the ritual didn't seem to succeed. Otherwise, the person who obtained these items would be extremely arrogant. These were all the thoughts that flashed through Han Fei's mind. At this moment he was grabbing the black bead. However, at the moment when Han Fei touched the black bead, suddenly, a mystic light burst out of the bead. Han Fei only saw a huge fist smashing at him, fierce, domineering, fierce, and terrifying. Han Fei had no time to dodge. As if he had been hit, he took 7 or 8 steps back in a row and covered his face with his hands. Although this was just a simple action that seemed to be familiar to everyone, this action exposed his weakness. The enemy was invincible. They could beat you, but you didn't dare to fight back. Naturally, you would be beaten by them. Han Fei sat on the ground, his eyes glazed, and a lot of insights appeared in his mind. He saw countless battlefields. There was an iron-blooded man who didn't wear a battle suit or use weapons. He only wrapped his fists in fish skin and fought everywhere. The sea creatures were collapsing. The strongest enemy was penetrated. Han Fei was shocked to find that the so-called art of invincibility didn't have any combat skills, incantations, or strange tactics. Everything was honed by this strong master in battles. At first, the pictures in his mind were still dealing with sea creatures, various sea monsters, and various heavenly talents. In the end, Han Fei saw what it meant to shake the sea with 2 fists. As this person punched the sea with both fists, the sea as far as the eye could see was churning like noodles. As the saying went, fists shook the sky. Han Fei saw that the shadow of this man's fist rushed up tens of thousands of meters and killed a super big fish on the spot. Wait, where did the fish come from? Han Fei was slightly stunned. However, this thought just flashed through his mind. Because there were too many pictures, which seemed to record the life of this strong master. Half a month later, 3 dragon boats came to the steps into the sea. There was no other reason than that there had been frequent vibrations here recently. Besides, there was a strange scene. The sacrificial effect of the steps into the sea seemed to be a little out of control. On the first floor of the steps into the sea, someone sacrificed an exotic creature, which led to a massacre. Someone sacrificed a high-quality spiritual weapon on the first 100 floors, which caused a sensation in the entire steps into the sea. However, this was only a very small number of cases. Because most people found that after they sacrificed, they couldn't summon a creature, so there were no prizes or rewards. On this day, half a month later, countless people crowded at the steps into the sea, and something that shocked everyone happened. Chao Tian came out of the steps into the sea. Someone asked, "Chao Tian, did you go to the bottom floor?" Chao Tian replied, "No." When Xia Xiaochan heard this answer, she turned around and left. She knew that this time it was a big deal. Chapter 478. Above the altar, Han Fei had been sitting quietly for half a month. At this time, there was no spiritual energy fluctuation in Han Fei's body, nor did he reveal any energy fluctuations. However, he was fighting. Yes, he was fighting in those scenes. Han Fei knew that these scenes were all fake, but whenever he entered these scenes, he still felt overwhelming pressure pouring over him. In fact, in these scenes, what he experienced was not fighting skills at all, and he didn't even feel the slightest satisfaction of fighting. What he felt was pressure, the pressure brought to him by various marine creatures. It was a pity that the scenes he could enter were only dangling fishers. As for the other scenes, they only flashed through his mind for a moment. For example, he saw mermaids, not the kind of mermaids that had not fully evolved, but the kind of real mermaids. Just a glance at the scene made him frightened, as if the other party's eyes were on him. Suddenly, Han Fei opened his eyes. Fortunately, no one saw it, otherwise they would be scared by Han Fei's eyes at this moment. Those eyes contained strength, confidence, and invincibility. Just at a glance, he could tell whether this person was a strong master or not. Han Fei got up calmly and twisted his neck. He walked to the table on the altar, waved his hand, and directly collected the table and the tray into Forge the Universe. If the Almighty who had set up this altar had seen this scene, he would have vomited blood. "You fucking took the treasures. Why did you take away the tables?" Han Fei's idea was very simple. These 4 things were all priceless treasures. How could they be placed on ordinary tables? "Since I'm here, I'll take them all." Han Fei looked around and found no place to go out. He didn't immediately try to communicate with the steps into the sea. He walked down the steps step by step. This time, there were almost no obstacles. He didn't feel anything, as if the steps under his feet were ordinary steps. Han Fei stood on the bones all over the ground and looked back at the altar. At this moment, he suddenly realized why he appeared in the Heavenly Water Village. Why did the demon purification pot bring him to the Heavenly Water Village? Why was there a vine of the demon purification pot in the level 3 fishery? Are there only 2 vines in the demon purification pot? Han Fei didn't know that, but he felt that the demon purification pot itself was a big secret. Buzz! The ground shook again. However, such tremors had occurred countless times in the past half a month. Han Fei wondered if there was something wrong with the seal, just like in the Seaborn Prairie. After all, the 4 treasures here had all been taken away by him, and even the table had been taken away by him. At this moment, he suddenly had a question in his heart. Who was the one making the sacrifice here? What was the purpose of the sacrifice? Who would receive this sacrifice? Now, all these sacrifices were in his pocket. Did the one who was sacrificed exist? Would he come looking for trouble with her? Han Fei walked around the altar and found traces of a battle here. The edges of the sacrificial altar were slightly damaged. Then, he pulled apart the white bones, and sure enough, he found some bones that did not belong to humans. Han Fei climbed up the altar again without any hindrance. He walked to the 2 broken fish bones and chopped them with a blood-drinking knife, only to find that they were not broken, not even the slightest scratch. Han Fei's eyes immediately lit up, and he stuffed the 2 pillar-like fish bones into Forge the Universe. This was fucking good stuff. It was better than the blue sea wandering dragon bone and as smooth as jade. At first glance, he could tell that these were not ordinary fish bones. It was a pity that there were only 2 broken fish bones. Han Fei counted, and there were a total of 20 fish bones left. Han Fei was tempted. According to the size of these fish bones, a fish bone could be made into at least 100 weapons, and they were probably of the highest quality. How many could he make with 22? 2,200? Han Fei couldn't help but be tempted. These fish bones were too valuable. Although he had gained enough benefits, who wouldn't mind having more treasures? Han Fei used the draw technique on the fish bones on the altar. With a dang sound, he was forced to take a few steps back. When he took a closer look, he found that there were still no scratches on the fish bones. Are these fish bones used to refine divine weapons? At this time, as if some kind of chain reaction had occurred, the steps into the sea suddenly shook violently and didn't stop until 10 minutes later. Seeing that he couldn't cut it, Han Fei immediately ran to the bottom of the steps, summoned the nine-tailed mantis shrimp. Come on, pull these bones apart and see if the ground can be dug. The nine-tailed mantis shrimp? Fortunately, the nine-tailed mantis shrimp couldn't speak. Every time you call me out, nothing good will happen. Either digging holes or digging the ground. Well, now Master's interests are getting more and more strange. He's starting to dig bones. This altar was not large, only more than 50 meters in radius. Unlike the big red mantis shrimp, it was solid soil, while this place was full of wreckage, so it was very fast. It took Han Fei and the nine-tailed mantis shrimp about half an hour to clean up the area around the altar. After cleaning up, Han Fei was shocked to find that the stacked wreckage here was more than 3 meters thick. He really couldn't imagine how many geniuses had died here. At this time, Han Fei was lying on the ground of the altar, stuffing the tip of the knife into the bottom of the altar. However, what made him very helpless was that this thing couldn't even be stuffed with the tip of the knife. Han Fei stabbed the blood-drinking knife into the ground, but it was not soil at all, but a layer of flat water. The water was muddy and it seemed that he could penetrate it with a stretch of his hand, but in fact, he couldn't dig it at all. If the hexagon starfish were here, it would definitely tell Han Fei, this is a fucking super seal. As long as the seal is not broken, you can't poke the knife through it. Seeing that it couldn't dig, the nine-tailed mantis shrimp crazily flicked the seal with its forelimbs, making the seal explode non-stop. Later, seeing that he couldn't move it anymore, the nine-tailed mantis shrimp simply went on strike. It's not that I don't want to dig, but I can't dig it at all. Han Fei grinned and refused to leave. Every few seconds, he would hold the altar and collect it. Master Calabash, I helped you find the vine leaves that have been lost for many years. How about you collect an altar for me? I will. I will. He didn't know how many times he tried, but suddenly, the altar shook. Han Fei immediately looked overjoyed. Continue to collect, I will collect, I will collect. Suddenly Han Fei heard a loud noise, which seemed to come from under the altar. Has the foundation been broken by me? Bam, bam, bam. Suddenly Han Fei heard a violent knocking sound. It seemed that something was attacking under the altar. Shit. Han Fei was dumbfounded. The nine-tailed mantis shrimp had quickly swam to Han Fei's side. From time to time, it touched the altar with its forelimbs. It seemed to have also noticed that there seemed to be something below. Han Fei was dumbfounded. There are living things below? As a spirit gatherer, he was more sensitive to the movement of spiritual energy. Han Fei suddenly felt that there were bits of spiritual energy around him flowing towards the altar. To be precise, it might not be on the altar, but from the bottom of the altar, far away and slowly seeping up. At that time, Han Fei jumped back 2 or 3 meters and observed the dynamics of the surrounding spiritual energy blankly. After a while, he was finally very sure that there seemed to be something under the altar absorbing the wandering spiritual energy. It's over, it's over. Things are getting out of hand. Han Fei was horrified. Could there be something terrible sealed under this altar? Although the free spiritual chi gathered very slowly and didn't seem to permeate much, the problem was that spiritual chi could be accumulated into a mickle. For example, if Han Fei set up a large interlocking spirit gathering formation on the altar at this moment, then no matter how slow the gathering of spiritual energy was, it wouldn't be a problem to gather 20,000 points of spiritual energy a day. Seeing that the nine-tailed mantis shrimp was still flicking its head at the altar from time to time, Han Fei went up and kicked it. Are you crazy? What if it bounces off? Let's go. In the outside world, there were more and more people on the steps into the sea, and everyone was curious. The situation in the seaborne grassland hadn't calmed down yet. Only the insect tide had subsided. Someone passed through the seaweed wall and found that the lotus fish was no longer willing to carry people through the abyss. Now, the undersea city had collapsed before the seaborne grassland was over. Good heavens, the steps into the sea had a problem immediately afterward. Some people came in, and naturally some people left. Those who left were wandering around the periphery of the steps into the sea. To put it bluntly, they were watching a show or waiting for some good luck to come. Someone said, "Only fools will go inside at this moment. God knows if the steps into the sea will collapse or not. If it does, what will happen to the people inside?" Someone said, "Many people have already run out. Don't you see that those who dare to enter the steps into the sea are basically peak-level dangling fishers?" Someone sighed. "I heard that it is Fan Datong, the black and white ghosts." Chao Tian said that he had seen him on the 251st floor. Someone sighed. "So, the masters on the wanted list all hide their strength deeply. The 251st floor, how many fucking treasures did they have to sacrifice?" Someone guessed, "At least a mid-quality spiritual weapon, right?" Someone laughed and scolded, "Are you fucking stupid? Why are your eyes so shallow? Where do you think it is? A mid-quality spiritual weapon? If it were so simple, the steps into the sea would have been flattened long ago." When the discussion outside was in full swing, suddenly, a fishing boat flew over from the sky. On it, an ugly girl shouted while flying, "Come on, I found the traces of the black and white ghosts. They have already reached the periphery." What? How is it possible? Fuck, when did they go out? For a time, the entire periphery of the sea platform was in an uproar. And the girl, shouting, had been drowned in the crowd. Chapter 479. On an ordinary fishing boat, Xia Xiaochan turned into an ordinary girl and looked at the platform into the sea. Now, there seemed to be no movement. It was estimated that Han Fei might not come out for a while. However, he would come out sooner or later. Now, there were still too many people on the steps into the sea. She had to find a way to lead some away. On the platform into the sea, near the center, there was a small circle, and there was no one in a radius of nearly a kilometer. No matter how chaotic other places were, no one dared to come here. And here, gathered the heavenly talents and children of the major sects in the thousand-star city. Many people had extremely ugly expressions on their faces. Chao Tian was surrounded by a group of people at the moment. Yang Du asked, "Old Chao, did you really meet Fan Datong on the 251st floor? The one with a stick?" Sun Mu nodded. "His best weapon is knives." Li Hai and Li Baizhou nodded on the side. "Yes, that guy is very good with knives. Ordinary people can't resist him." Yi Baiyu also came over. "The guy you are talking about is very bad. He even colluded with Tangu, Mu Ling, Chao Qiu, and 2 swords to besiege me. However, he is very slow. Is that guy really so strong?" Chao Tian smiled innocently. "My footwork is not as good as yours, but in terms of head-on combat, you are too weak." When Chao Tian spoke, many people curled their lips. "Only a few of you can say that Yi Baiyu is weak. Why don't you try someone else?" Mo Fian asked, "Where are Chao Qiu and 2 swords?" A disciple of a major sect said, "They slipped away. We had diarrhea for so long. As our accomplices, how dare they stay here?" As soon as this person finished speaking, he found that someone was looking at him sympathetically. Then he felt himself flying. He had been kicked into the sky by someone. Chao Tian glanced at the person. "What? Do you still want to get revenge?" I was just saying." The person was horrified. Chao Tian usually looked simple and honest, but he doted on his younger brother the most. If anyone dared to speak ill of Chao Qiu in front of him, they would definitely be beaten up by Chao Tian. Therefore, although many people couldn't wait to beat Chao Qiu up in front of Chao Tian, no one dared to mention Chao Qiu, whether it was Yang Du, Sun Mu, or anyone else. Li Baizhou laughed. "Chen Aochen ran away a long time ago. Chao Tun seemed to have left with your sister." Chao Tian grunted softly, as if he wasn't worried about this matter at all. However, Li Hai suddenly looked at Yi Baiyu and said, Fan Datong is a strange man. Didn't you say that there are two black and white ghosts? Fan Datong is only a black impermanence. I heard that the white impermanence is a woman. Why haven't I seen her? Mo Fian suddenly exclaimed, not good, they can disguise themselves. Disguise? They were stunned for a moment and then looked at Mo Fian. Mo Fian immediately told everyone about her encounter with Xia Xiaochan on the 201st floor. At that time, if Han Fei hadn't arrived in time, she might have fought with Xia Xiaochan. Sun Mu suddenly said, you're saying that the man was a woman in disguise? Whose disguise technique could achieve such a complete disguise? Turning themselves into a man? Yang Du shouted, what's so strange about that? He can make so many of you suffer from diarrhea. Have you ever seen a dangling fisher suffer from diarrhea? Sun Mu frowned. Mo Fian, the man you mentioned seems to be quite different from the white ghost. I've heard of the white ghost. She is a soul warrior, and the man you mentioned is a hunter. Where has Chao Chiu been before? Everyone? After a while, someone said, I think he went to the sea grassland. Someone shook his head. No, he seems to have come from the direction of the undersea city. Someone saw him driving the ghost speed divine boat there. Suddenly, Mo Fian was taken aback. Sun Mu, you mean? How is it possible? Sun Mu's face darkened. Why is it impossible? Don't forget, the black and white ghosts are intermediate dangling fishers. Yang Du poked his big head over. What are you two talking about? Li Baizhou nodded. What's the secret code? Speak human language. Sun Mu suddenly raised his head, his eyes full of indifference. We have all been deceived. However, we still need to confirm one thing. Ask someone to find out when the black and white ghosts first appeared. Where did they first appear? The others were not familiar with Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan, but Sun Mu's eyes were already cold. If the black and white ghosts were really Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan, then these two people were too terrifying. They could fight all the way to the steps into the sea after completely abandoning their own advantages, which was enough to show the talent of these two people. After a while, one of Sun Mu's subordinates came with an advanced dangling fisher. If Han Fei were here, he would be surprised. Why was Li Hani still in the steps into the sea? Li Hani almost cried. He was really lucky. On the steps into the sea, he fought crazily without asking for prizes. Others sacrificed for opportunities, but he sacrificed for a breakthrough. Now, he had just become an advanced dangling fisher 2 days ago. He felt that if he survived a great disaster, he would surely have good fortune later on. No one would dare to believe such a rapid growth rate if they told others about it. The subordinate said, Young master, it has been confirmed. When the black and white ghosts appeared, they happened to be in the middle of the steps into the sea and the undersea city. And these two people also appeared after the collapse of the undersea city. This person's name is Li Hani. Han Fei once pretended to be him and was later caught by the black and white ghosts. Li Hani's heart sank. He was not a fool. According to this person's words, the fucking black and white ghosts were pretended to be Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan. Li Hani suddenly remembered that there were no cooks. Fan Datong was also a foodie, and so was Xie Xiaoan. They were exactly the same as Han Fei. However, they always put the same person in the hot pot, which was what frightened him the most. It was also because of this that he had never suspected them. Now that he thought about it, when Fan Datong asked him about Han Fei, he would be beaten up if he said anything bad about Han Fei. Damn it, it was 100% Han Fei. There was no other way. Sun Mu just glanced at Li Hani, ignored him, and then analyzed. In this way, it makes sense. He sneered. At that time, we all entered the steps into the sea and Chao Chiu saw it. At that time, the seaborne grassland was in turmoil, and Han Fei became famous in one battle. So Chao Chiu went to the seaborne grassland to find Han Fei. But at that time, Han Fei had already pretended to be Li Hani and ran to the undersea city. After hearing this, Chao Chiu went to the undersea city again. But when he arrived, the undersea city had already collapsed. He could only turn back to the steps into the sea. Then, Chao Chiu naturally met the black and white ghosts that Han Fei pretended to be. Wow! Yang Du's eyes widened. Damn it! So, Chao Chiu always knew that the black and white ghosts were Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan? Mo Fian nodded. Otherwise, do you think Chiu would choose people who are not strong as allies? Li Hai and Li Baizhou looked at each other. I see, so that Fan Datong is the person your Sun family has been looking for. Chao Tian still looked silly. Oh, Chiu has a good eye. Everyone, the group of people just dared not say anything. If someone else found such a troublemaker to trick them, they would have been skinned alive by them. How could they be like this now? They couldn't even say a word. Chao Tian was not interested in this, so he asked, "Where is Tanggu? I want to fight with him." Someone beside him said, "Tanggu and Mu Ling have been gone for almost 10 days. Chao Tian nodded slightly. Then forget it. It's boring here. I'm leaving. Yi Baiyu said, "Chao Tian, I'll go with you." Yi Baiyu was a free and easy person. After meeting Han Fei, he always felt that this person was very strange. This kind of person, he would either be able to beat him 100% or not. He was just fast, but in terms of combat power, he might not be as good as Li Hai and Li Baizhou. Therefore, Yi Baiyu was not going to argue with Han Fei. In the future, if there was a chance, he would even exchange drinks with Han Fei and enhance their friendship. But with that, Chao Tian left without looking back. Being with a group of scheming people always made him feel very tired. He didn't like it very much. After Chao Tian left, many people breathed a sigh of relief. Yang Du carried a big axe. How about it? Are we still waiting here? We must wait until that damn Han Fei comes out. I'm going to chop him to death. Fuck off. Mo Fian rolled her eyes at Yang Du. Can you beat him? You're going to chop him to death? If Fan Datong is really Han Fei, then Han Fei's growth is too fast, isn't it? When he was in the sea grassland, his subordinates, who were only peak-level dangling fishers, almost killed him several times. But how long has it been since then? More than a month? Han Fei had broken into his immortal slaying formation alone. Yang Du seemed to have also been defeated by him. Mo Fian also failed to defeat Xia Xiaochan, and even Yi Baiyu was almost surrounded. At this moment, there was a noise outside. Someone shouted, "Black and white ghosts have been found. Quick hands, no hands." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.